Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto fell in love with Asuna sword art online. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Kur0 Kishi and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. So here I am, as an avid fan of SAO for nearly 4 years, before it became as popular as it is now, finally making a combination fanfic of my two favorite fandoms, thanks to a certain friend of mine egging me on. Then again, it was probably bound to happen, it just happened earlier than expected. Did you know that a category for sword art online did not exist until early this year? Soundtrack list. 2 steps from hell, strength of 1,000 men. The Hunter. Burrito. Naruto. Duck. You retard. Is that what you're supposed to say to someone that's about to die? A raven-haired boy screamed back as he hit the floor. A blood-red light flashed right above, barely cutting off a few strands of black hair on its way to its target. A blazing spear pierced the right eye of the Kobold Lord. Last boss of the first floor. It teetered for a moment before falling over backwards with a massive rumble. The Hunter. Sword art online. The first and most awaited game of the century, if only by virtue of being the first game to fully take advantage of the Nerve Gear's virtual capabilities, full dive, unlike the many subpar and unsatisfying mini-games and puzzles that had flooded the market for years before the Sword Art Online had been announced, where one could only walk for barely a few paces before encountering a solid wall and operate within the specified tiny parameters. Which was why a blue-eyed blonde could only vibrate in place as he placed the nerve gear, a helmet-shaped contraption on his head, anxious to enter full dive after finally obtaining a copy, one of only 10,000 released, by queuing 3 days outside his local game store before the official release date. Link start. He intoned with visible and audible excitement, and just like that, his brain was disconnected to the real world and redirected by the nerve gear into a full dive. The difference between the still, pale body and the flushed, excited boy moments earlier was unsettlingly startling. If only he had known how bad the difference could been. Blue eyes opened to a massive vortex of swirling colors and swiveled around excitedly as he heard whirring and sounds, tinkling and water flowing, signs that the nerve gear was checking the available resources and compatibility. The chimes signaled that the connection was perfect, and a line of floating text, in bold black, slowly faded into existence in front of the boy. Complete upload, green. Teching complete. Log in register. He lifted one hand, marveling at how natural it felt to move within the virtual world and touch the login button. Language. Japanese. Account. Password. Creation character. Beta test data still available. Would you like to use it? Yes. Enter now. He smiled and said the one word that would change the rest of his life, yes. The Hunter. The tall, muscular man, with a long blonde ponytail and perfect facial features, appeared out of a cloud of blue lights, landing softly on the earthy ground a few inches away. Sharp blue eyes that gleamed like sapphire gems opened, gleaming with excitement, and he immediately took off towards to the nearest Japanese-style restaurant. It was time to get back his partner, a partner that he had left back in the beta and had carried his regrets ever since. There was no guarantee that it would still be here, since it was technically a bug after all, but there was no harm in trying. Yo, Ba-chan. He cheerfully greeted the old woman manning the Odin store. He knew of course that she was just an NPC and that no amount of flattery or manners would help lower prices, but then again. Good afternoon, welcome to my store. She replied with a toothless grin and a polite bow, what will you be having today? 1 whole pack of fried tofu please. Naruto said with a grin as he checked his inventory to confirm that he still had the coals that were carried over from the beta test. Hi. Here you go. The NPC grinned cheerfully as she handed him a pack wrapped in oil paper. Naruto promptly accepted it gratefully and stored it into his inventory with a burst of blue sparks. Then he bought a simple carving knife, some potions and a beginner's spear from the nearest general store and immediately headed out into the field towards the deepest part of the forest at the southern end of the floor where he knew a secret dungeon was located. He gripped his spear and grinned as it glowed a bright blue, signaling the starting movement of the basic spear skill, thrust, in preparation to run it through a skeleton boar, a level 3 mob. Considering the fact that he had logged in directly when the server had officially started and that the level of the mobs here were higher than the recommended ones for a beginner, he doubted that anyone had cleared this mini dungeon yet, so he was fairly confident that he could not only clear it, gain his partner back, and gain some levels faster than most of the other players. One of the benefits of being a beta tester, he thought happily as he slaughtered his way through floor after floor. Faster, faster, he began muttering as he dodged another boar charge, about the only thing they could do here, and retaliated by running his spear into the boar's side. The boar screeched a death rattle as it thrashed, stuck on the end of the spear that was continuously causing it more and more damage before it froze and shattered into a shower of polygons. Faster, faster, need to be faster. He barely even noticed that he had just reached level 2, preferring to jump through the next hole in a great hurry. Unlike the normal dungeons that linked floor to floor, which slowly ascended, these ones slowly moved downwards in spiral. Similarly, there really wasn't much point to mini dungeons like these ones. The only real reward they gave aside from experience were crafting materials for weapons and armors, which wasn't very useful at lower levels since there were no craftsmen, not to mention far more expensive than it was worth to craft a unique piece of equipment with the material. When the blonde landed in a crouch at the bottom of the hole, he looked up and grinned. A massive gate, black, intimidating and about twice the height of a full-grown man, stood at the very end of an empty path. Without hesitation, the blonde pushed off powerfully and began moving at a brisk run towards the portal. The closer he got to the giant iron gates, the larger the smile on his lips and the stronger his legs pumped, sending the stamina meter all over the place. He slapped one hand on the cold iron of the gate and burst through it in one move, eyes wildly looking around the familiar chamber, lit by rows of floating fire spirits, in keeping with the ghost theme of the dungeon, on each side of the wall. At the end of the hall, something massive moved in the gloom, the sound of 4 feet or paws hitting the cold earthen floor as the monster lumbered out of shadows, gave him hope that the bugs still existed, only to crash it moments later as a massive skeleton, a boar, with tusks as long as his legs were long. Pieces of rotting flesh clung to its ribs and a disgusting smell wafted from its body. Golden hair obscured his blue eyes as he shook slightly in disappointment. They had changed the final boss of the dungeon. The boar roared, despite the fact that it lacked any vocal cords to do so with, snapping the blonde out of his catatonia, rolling away from a massive paw that smashed the spot he had been standing at with barely a second to spare. Showing far more intelligence and maneuverability than it should have, the boar jumped backwards and immediately charged at him again, hefting his spear with an iron grip. Naruto rolled underneath the boar's snapping jaw and thrust it upwards, shoving it straight into where the boar's brains should have been. The wooden pole snapped, leaving the metal spike at the end embedded in the bone of its skull, and nothing but a piece of shattered shaft in his hands. Looking up, he took note that that single attack had managed to drain the skeleton boar of half of its single horsepower bar. Unfortunately, the boar took that moment of inattention to slam its sharp hooves on the blonde, smashing his arm and sending his horsepower into the yellow zone. The blonde gritted his teeth and rolled away. A small icon appeared at the top right of his HUD, showing that he had lost a limb and consequently, a percentage of his core stats. Growling, the blonde got up and ran towards the boar, his face twisted with an expression of great focus, broken shaft held in one hand. His skeleton jaw seemed to grin before the boar lunged forward, massive jaw open to snap him in half. A small smile appeared and he backflipped, narrowly avoiding his death. Not that it would have mattered, but it would have been a pain to make his way through the respawns, and landed right on top of the giant boar's skull in a crouch. He smiled wryly and drove the butt of the broken shaft directly into the glinting point of the spearhead sticking out of yellow bone. The boar immediately froze in place, and its structure seemed to phase unstably for a moment before it truly died with a shattering of blue crystals, sending Naruto tumbling to the ground now that he lost his support. The moment the boar died, the flickering orange light steadied, providing clear light and chasing Everwise shadow away from the chamber. Groaning slightly, the blonde stood up and made his way towards the big golden chest that sat atop a dais. Tapping it gently, a small menu appeared out of thin air, and the blonde selected the open option without a word. A block of heavy black wood appeared, floating above the treasure chest, nearly as tall and thick as him. Sighing, the blonde tapped the block of wood, bone wood, and sent into his inventory. He gave a tired and disappointed sigh. Guess I'll try again tomorrow. He muttered as he pulled up his menu and began looking for the log out button. That's weird. It's not there. Just then a circle of blue light appeared around his feet and waist, adding even more to his confusion, a teleport circle. Well, it wasn't too strange, Naruto figured as his vision was slowly obscured by bright blue lights. A forced teleport of every player in the field to the City of Beginnings wasn't really too unexpected if there was a massive bug. The only difference it made to him was that Argus would clearly get some bad rep over this mess. The Hunter. 1 month into the game, 2,000 people had lost their lives. The hope that outside help would come was crushed mercilessly. Not even a peep had gotten through. Or if there was, no one alerted anyone else to it. He hadn't seen it himself, but they said that the panic and the madness that took hold of the players when they realized that they really couldn't get back was unbelievable. Fear, chaos, despair, madness reigned. It was a common sight to see people crying and others wailing in the City of Beginnings. Some even tried to dig up the ground of the city, saying that they were going to destroy this world as a way of rebelling. Of course, all buildings were given statuses as non-destructible objects, so this attempt failed without any results to show for it. They say that it took days for the players to accept the situation and think of what to do afterward. To be absolutely honest, he had fared no better. He had secluded himself in an inn, using what remained of his kernel, staring at the wall as day turned into night, again and again. Since there was no official method of keeping time, he lost count of how long he stayed in his room, using the small carving knife that he had bought in his first hour into the game to cut random shapes into the massive block of wood. By pure accident, he had cut himself. Being in the city where the safety net operated, it was only natural, but his horsepower would not reduce no matter what he might have been capable of doing. However, what really snapped him out of his shock was the fact that he could see into his hand through the gash made by his knife. It was supposed to be deep red, warm and wet. Instead it was blue, with spinning codes and something resembling a wireframe made of lights. His mortality. His death. And he heard the voice of his grandmother, a strong woman who owned a hunting range and taught her own brand of archery, who had taken care of him ever since he was a kid and his parents had died, talking to him in a soothing tone, the way she always did when he had nightmares. He stabbed his hand another time and swore that he would live to meet her again and say, "Akari, Bachan." With a renewed vigor, he continued to carve the block of wood into something usable. The very next day, he obtained a new spear and began clearing the fields and gaining levels using his knowledge from the beta test. It was 1 month after that when news spread that the first floor's boss room had finally been found and there would be a strategy meeting being held in the City of Beginnings. Which was some of the best news that he had ever heard. Despite having started out later than most of the frontline fighters, the fact was that no progress could be made unless they cleared the first floor because of the slowly decreasing benefit margin from killing monsters, which basically meant there was a whole bunch of level 20 people sitting around with nothing to do unless they planned on killing thousands upon thousands of level 6 monsters to reach level 21, enabled him to catch up in terms of levels. Yo, Kirito. A blond man dressed in a bulky cloak that Kirito assumed hid his heavy armor and a simple wooden spear strapped to his back, nonchalantly greeted a raven-haired boy in simple leather armor with a cheerful smile. Black eyes glanced at the man before turning back to the entrance to the stadium, "Joker." He replied with a nod, "You here for the meeting as well? I keep telling you just call me Naruto." The blonde replied with a cheerful slap on the stoic boy's back, eliciting a wry smile at his cheerfulness. Unlike many of the other players that he knew, the friendly blonde man, whose avatar was, fittingly enough, named Joker, seemed to lack any sort of privacy, or sensitivity for that matter, at all, and insisted on telling everybody and anybody his real name. No matter how Kirito tried to ignore and distance himself from people, the blonde pretty much just ignored his efforts and treated the raven-haired boy like a friend unlike everybody else. And again, he seemed to pretty much treat everyone like that anyway, constantly joking, friendly, cheerful and annoying. Kirito didn't exactly know the blonde personally, the only reason they were even on speaking terms was because the blonde always seemed to know the best places to grind and coincidentally bumped into Kirito on a semi-regular basis outside said spots. That alone told him that the blonde was more than likely to be a beta tester, just like him. Naruto hefted his spear and wrapped one arm around the black-eyed boy's neck in an overly friendly gesture, "Come on, can't let the party start without the main characters, eh?" He rolled his eyes and ducked out of the neck hold, walking away without another word as a comically crying blonde followed behind. The two of them took a seat at the very back of the amphitheater. Right in the middle at the lowest part of the stadium was a blue-haired man dressed in light chainmail, the best kind of armor possible for the first floor, as he addressed the gathered players. Speaking of which. As the knight who called himself Diable began speaking, he listened to the speech with half a mind as he glanced at the bulky man beside him. Kirito had never seen him fight before despite bumping into him quite often. The blonde obviously used a spear, a mid-range weapon which had some of the highest damage per hit in Sword Art Online, offset by its low attack animation and weight. Because of the weight, spear users were very slow in battle, necessitating heavy armor to improve survivability because they simply couldn't move fast enough to avoid attacks. The problem here was that heavy armor would not be available until the 4th floor, so what was the blonde hiding under that heavy cloak? Not to mention that simple plain spear was a level 1 weapon, something that could be bought easily from any store. Someone like him that apparently knew all the best spots could have gotten something way better by now. He shook his head slightly, "It's not my problem. Focus on the problem in front of you. Is this seat taken?" A new voice joined them as a new player joined the duo at the back of the stadium. Kirito and Naruto looked up to see a player, fully swathed in hooded robes that obscured all his or her defining features. Everyone else here seemed to have groups already, and they said I couldn't join the boss battle without a group. And you two seem to be the only ones left. He reluctantly muttered. "We're a group." Kirito commented blandly, "I must have missed that memo. We're a group. Mr. Sourpuss here is just having a bad day." Naruto cheerfully assured the newcomer, pulling down the menu and sending the two of them an invite, "Feel free to sit with us. I'm Naruto, and the wet towel is Kirito." Reluctantly, the two accepted his invitation. Kirito glanced to the top left of his HUD, as did Naruto, to see the name of their new friend. Without further comment, the three of them decided to turn back to the meeting. "Does everyone have a party already?" The blue-haired knight asked the gathering. Hearing a mumble of agreement, he smiled. "Well then. Wait a moment. Before we continue, there's something that has to be said." A new, low and gravelly voice that contrasted with Diable's soothing tone interrupted the session with a Kansai dialect. The cactus-headed man, wearing simple leather armor, stood up near the bottom of the amphitheater. "I am Kibeu," he proclaimed boldly. "As I already mentioned, there has be something that needs to be said." His beady eyes swept around the arena, landing particularly at the very back where three people sat, away from the crowd, causing Kirito to shake a little as he realized what was happening. "There are at least 10 to 15 people here that need to apologize to everybody else." Apology? To whom? From who? Was constantly being muttered all around the arena. The knight that was still standing behind him on the fountain edge, Diable, raised both hands in question. Without looking at him, Kibeu spit out in hatred. "Ah, isn't it obvious?" To the 2,000 now dead people. Those guys who had already played the game before, monopolized all the most important resources, selfishly advancing themselves. Well, 2,000 people died uselessly in the first month we were here. Isn't that right? At that moment, the low buzzing in the 40 people audience cut short. All went silent. What Kibeu wanted to say, everyone finally understood. In the oppressive silence, only the evening BGM from the NPC orchestra played quietly. No one said anything. If anything was said, then at that moment you might be labeled as one of those GUI. As such, a fear was probably there. No, not probably. At the very least, Kirito was clearly caught by that fear until a large reassuring hand landed on his shoulder, unspoken reassurance from the older man, his eyes sharply piercing the cactus-headed man. Calming down slightly, he nodded in thanks. Nothing needed to be said or explained. They both knew the other were beta testers, and that was enough. "Kibeu-san. The people you are referring to are the original beta testers, right?" Diable, with his arms crossed, showed the most stern look up till now as he asked for confirmation. "Obviously." With the thick metal pieces of his scale mail clinking over the leather he wore, Kibeu took a glance at the knight behind him and continued boldly. "Those beta testers, on the day this shitty game started, dashed from the starting city and disappeared. They left behind over 9,000 people who didn't know left from right. They monopolized good hunting grounds and profitable quests, got stronger without a care for those behind. There should be some in this group hiding their beta status, some sly people thinking of joining the boss fight. I want them to kneel down once to the party members their lives depend on. That's what I want to say." Like his name, FanFiction, he cut off his condemnation with a bite of his teeth. Still, no one said anything, except one. "May I speak?" At that time, a rich and forceful baritone resounded in the evening plaza. From the left side of the crowd, a silhouette moved forward. Huge. His height was easily over 180 centimeters, probably. An avatar's size, or even the player's natural abilities in real life, was not supposed to have any effect on his stats, but in this case, the two-handed battle axe slung over his back actually seemed lightweight to him. His appearance, too, was impressive and did not lose to his weapon. A fully bald head and chocolate-colored skin. However, the chiseled face was so fitting you might think it was customized. Not Japanese. Instead of saying that, maybe he was not even human. The muscular giant moved forward to the fountain, lightly bowed to the other players, and then turned to the dramatically different in height Kibeu. "My name is Egil. Kibeu-san, what you wanted to say is that many beginners died because original beta testers did not take care of them, and you want them to accept that responsibility and apologize, isn't that right?" That's right." Kibeu, momentarily overwhelmed, took a step back, but then soon moved back forward. With his shiny, small eyes glaring at the axe user called Egil, he shouted. "If they did not leave us behind, 2,000 people would not have died. However, they are not just any 2,000 people, most of them were other MMO top ranks or veterans. If those shitty testers properly shared information, items and money, then there would have been 10 times the people here know. By now we would have broken through the second or third floor. Out of that 2,000 deaths, 300 of them were known beta testers." A calm, strangely firm voice from beside Kirito spoke up, saying what the swordsman already had in mind. "Some of them were people I knew, some I was even close with." He slowly stood up, his height just as imposing as the dark-skinned man at the bottom. The bulky cloak on his back only made it more obvious as he slowly stepped down to the base. "Almost all of us stand at the forefront, testing the game with our wits, skills and bodies with outdated knowledge from the beta, then passing down that knowledge to the new players. Even then, our knowledge barely stretches past the 10th floor, what then? He stood face to chest with the Kibayu and lowered his face until they were nose to nose. Well, what you said is true for a lot of self-serving beta testers. Do you expect the rest of us to hold the hands of 10,000 players and lead you through the Incred? Is thanklessly giving our time, knowledge and lives not enough? You think we weren't scared too? He roared in the clearly frightened man's face. He spun around to face the rest of the crowd and roared boldly, you want someone to scream at me. Burrito had to admit this was the first time he had seen the blonde so riled up, but in doing so, he could not bring himself to agree. The blonde had literally painted a massive red target on his broad back, sacrificing himself for the rest of the beta testers. Naruto spat on the floor and glanced at Kibayu's chainmail armor, which clearly of high quality, something he pointed out with a disdainful tap, unlike his own, if a hypocrite like you wants to be complain and rail against the unfairness of this world, well you are safe and pampered, join the army boy, will the rest of us beat a path for you to climb with our blood and sweat. He turned back and swiftly climbed back towards where Kirito and Asuna sat, apologizing quietly to his party members, sorry. I lost control for a moment there. Brave. Stupidly, pointlessly so. Kirito commented casually. That's what my grandmother said. Naruto said with a small grin as they continued to watch the discussion continue. What's a beta player? The third member of their party lowly asked as they left the amphitheater. The two shared a glance and Kirito gave Naruto a mocking bow, causing the blonde to wryly roll his eyes as he turned to the new member. Basically, before the official server started, Argus rolled out a test server for 1,000 randomly selected applicants to test and root out any problems in the encoding so that there wouldn't be, or at least there would be fewer problems, when the real thing came out for the public. Asuna nodded slowly, so as a result, assuming all of the selected 1,000 players re-entered the official server, they would have prior information and experience with the game. Something like having some inside information before an important exam. Like in that guidebook Ijil-san had. She postulated. Something like that. Naruto agreed with a nod, technical information, how to use skills, how to scavenge for food and kernel, best places to rest and level. That being said, the amount of resources available is limited, just like real life, so there is no choice but to limit that to people that can get the best out of it. Imagine 10,000 players just trying to kill a bunch of mobs or hunt for the same material. I might sound ruthlessly elitist, but in Incred, it's the only way we can clear this place within the next century. Naruto explained tonelessly. Hurriedly he looked up at the synthetic sky with as much resolve as he could muster. This might sound like an excuse, but we can't help everybody directly. The only way I can think of to do that is to clear this game as fast as possible. Of course, I don't have all the answers, feel free to come up with a better idea. Kirito came back bearing 3 pieces of bread that he handed to the two of them, saving one for himself as they found a secluded place to eat, away from the crowd. Cream? The black-haired boy quietly offered as he pulled out a small jar. I've got better, meat. Kuku. Naruto chuckled as he pulled out a small packet of delicious-smelling meat, roasted boar meat, took me 3 days to make this baby. Isn't that the one from the secret dungeon? From the last boss. Kirito looked distinctly disgusted despite the really appealing smell, wasn't he rotting? Well yeah, that's why it takes 3 days to cook this stuff. Then the two have heard something dripping. Simultaneously their heads swung around to see a visible line of drool dripping from the last member of their team. Oh, you want some? Naruto and Kirito offered with amused grins. Asuna hesitantly took the pack of meat and jar of cream, tapping it before tapping the piece of bread, spreading a thick layer of cream on it. Hesitantly she lifted the bread to her lips and glanced uncertainly at her acquaintances. Naruto mimed eating the bread then the meat. Asuna closed her eyes, as if she was about to take a dive into some deep, bottomless chasm, and stuff the bread and meat into her mouth at the same time. At that moment, the texture of the normally dry and rough bread changed substantially. The taste of a certain rustic cake spread throughout her mouth. The cream was sweet and slippery, with a refreshingly sour yogurt taste. The inside of her cheeks were hit with jolts of electrifying fulfillment. On the other hand, the juicy, salty taste of meat filled her mouth with its aroma, something she had been dying to taste for months, creating a harmony with the sour and doughy taste of the creamy bread. Within seconds, meat and bread disappeared into her gullet while her companions watched in amusement. The hooded person sighed with satisfaction and slumped down into a corner, allowing the hood to fall off, revealing glossy brown hair and a fulfilled smile. Now if I can just get a bath, I can die happy. She unconsciously muttered her thoughts out loud for the amused Kirito to hear. Naruto on the other hand. Your girl. Naruto's jaw dropped incredulously. The two of them looked at him like he was an idiot. What? It was a valid question, I honestly didn't notice. Kirito rolled his eyes and went back to eating. That aside, getting a bath is easy if you know how. You just have to find a proper place. I have one where I stay. he said nonchalantly, more focused on stuffing his cheeks with his dinner. He comically froze, jaw wide open mid-bite, when Asuna literally teleported herself directly in his face, brown hair lightly waving in the wind, where his eyes moved to the side, silently begging for help from the amused blonde who just shrugged, "Don't look at me. I live in a tree. The closest public bathhouse is on the second floor though." Asuna slowly stood up, towering over them with eyes burning with female righteousness. "Bath. Now." The two strong and brave fighters that have faced many monsters and demons, gulped and nodded frantically. As the hooded player stomped ahead of the two shivering men, Naruto leaned over and whispered into Kirito's ear, "I think I felt my balls shrivel up in real life." The raven-haired swordsman nodded silently. The hunter. The next morning found Naruto waiting for Kirito and Asuna on the very edges of the city, where Diable had appointed as the meeting spot. As the familiar-looking black-haired swordsman appeared out of the morning fog alongside the girl, dressed in her customary brown cloak, Naruto waved at them cheerfully. "You're here early." The hooded girl greeted with a nod. Naruto just grinned and gestured back over his shoulder at a massive oak tree that marked the border between the city and the fields. "That's where I live. Doesn't really give me much of a choice." "You were serious about living in a tree?" Kirito asked incredulously, "Are you even trying to stay alive?" The blonde dramatically hugged the tree and crooned to it, "Hey, don't diss the tree. It's alright Mr. Tree, he doesn't mean it. He's just upset his stupid inn isn't as comfy as you." "Is something wrong with him?" Asuna questioned lowly with a finger pointing at the blonde who was still crooning at the tree. "Don't worry, stick around and that'll be you in 3 weeks." Kirito replied dryly. "Stick with him and that'll be you in 3 days." Naruto called back from his tree. Asuna simply rolled her eyes as she listened to them volley insults back and forth. The three of them followed the 48-person strong group at the very back. She understood though, things were already tense enough on the way to the first official boss fight, and it appeared to be their way of lightening things up for her, a complete beginner. Their entourage made it all the way to the highest part of the maze on the 20th floor without any major problems. Most mobs were completely overwhelmed by the united strength of 49 very upset people wielding pointy things. "Are you ready?" Diable shouted, standing at the fore of the group with a massive gate of cold black iron behind him. Seeing no disagreements, he nodded and continued with a flick of his hair, "Alright, let me repeat the plan, 2 heavy armor tank parties, A and B. 3 high movement and high attack attacker parties, C, D and E. 2 long weapon equipped support parties, F and G tanks, will take turns to absorb damage, rotating pots and switch while keeping hate, while C, D and G will focus on taking out the boss. G and E will concentrate on keeping the kobold sentinels busy." He turned to the last 3 members that belonged to no group in particular, "Can you 3 provide support for groups G and E?" Naruto stepped forward confidently, "Understood. Rest easy and focus on taking that bastard down." Hibeu growled and elbowed Naruto out of the way, "Don't worry about that. We'll take care of that for you. Someone who is still using a level 1 spear should just stay back instead of getting in the way after all." The blonde simply readjusted the massive bulk spear on his back and stepped back in line without comment. "Why did you just let him walk over you like that?" Asuna whispered from under the hood, "They're obviously looking down on us." "Does it matter? Will inciting an argument here help defeat the boss?" Naruto commented lowly. "Understood." The rapier user with the slight profile nodded and prepared herself by drawing a rapier. "Is everyone ready?" The rousing roar that answered him caused him to smile brilliantly and slam his shield onto the massive iron gate, throwing it upon with an equally massive clang, a bristling wall of weapons behind him, pointing towards the sky. As 49 people charged bravely into the room with a resounding cry that combined with the sound of their stampeding feet. A surge ran up their spines, strengthening their will as they ran up and faced the massive boss monster, Ilfang, the kobold lord who was sitting on a throne. Egil, the tallest of the clearing group, barely managed to come up to its armrests. The kobold lord himself was no slouch, showing his true height as he stood up, large enough to throw a shadow on everybody at his feet. Its bloodthirsty eyes flashed a golden red at the sight of intruders. Its right hand wielded an axe made of bone, while its left had a leather buckler equipped. Behind its waist, a 1.5-meter long tower stood out. 4 HP gauges made themselves apparent, floating beside its snout. He roared a ferocious battle cry, spittle flying from his jaw as the cry summoned 3 ruined kobold sentinels at his feet. Everything went still for a while as each side watched the other, when the truce was broken by the sounds of the kobold sentinels banging on their shields and charging forwards. Mirroring their actions, G, E and Naruto's team charged forward to intercept the sentinels, while everyone else went directly at the kobold lord. Asuna's rapier, flashing out like a meteor to slide in between the gap of a sentinel's helmet, signaled the start of the battle. Further in front, the first group, armed with axes and huge shields, caught the first swing of the axe, while their support team stabbed, hacked and cut on the kobold lord's unguarded side. The battle was met. 2 hours later, a blonde slammed the end of his pike into the ground and flipped into the air somersaulting before bringing his spear down like a hammer, crushing the sentinel into fine paste that dissolved into blue dust. As if on cue, another sentinel spawned behind the throne and rejoined the battle. Suddenly someone shoved Naruto and Kirito aside. "You're just the support party, stop being so cocky." A familiar Kansai dialect grated in their ears. "Is it our fault that 3 of us kill faster than the 6 of you? Even with a level 1 spear?" Naruto shot back with a grin. Even Kirito chuckled a little as he and the blonde rejoined the battle. The blonde pursed his lips as he glanced at the Kobold Lord's remaining HP bars, 1.5 remaining. "This is bad. We took longer than I thought." "Oh, you mean nearly running out of potions before the boss has even started to properly attack is a bad thing?" Kirito sarcastically replied as he crossed blades with a sentinel with extra strength, stunning it momentarily. "Switch. That and I'm out of peanuts. Will you two stop joking? Men." Asuna yelled in exasperation at her teammates as she initiated a linear, running the point straight through the unprotected neck of the sentinel Kirito had just stunned. Just then the third gauge shattered and the boss stopped moving, breathing raggedly king as it threw down the bone axe in its right hand and the leather shield in its left simultaneously. It gave another defiant roar and brought its hand to the back of its waist, grasped the rag-bound handle, and slowly pulled out the TALWAR that would signal the change in tactics. From here on, it would only use the sword skills from the curved blade category, going into the berserk condition, becoming terribly wild, but dealing with it now is easier than before. It used a long-range longitudinal cut. As long as you grasped the timing of the skill when it was launched, even if you're near the boss you could avoid the edge of the weapon. That was when things went downhill with interest. Under Diable's command, the 6 people that formed Group C surrounded the boss. This was a formation that was not used while the boss still wielded the bone axe. As long as the 6 could avoid the wild swings of the tower until the boss exhausted itself for a few seconds. "Something's wrong." Naruto muttered, "That's not a tower. It's a katana. What do we do? Can I go home?" Asuna slapped the back of his head. "We are not going to go home and let everyone die. What's the difference between that tower thing and a katana?" Different skill sets. A tower is a low-class, curved blade type of weapon that can only attack in one direction. Katanas are high-level type weapons that are far faster and have far more versatile skills, including an AoE skill. Kirito jumped forward, ignoring Naruto's words, forcefully sucked air into his lungs, and bellowed loudly. This won't do, fall back. Retreat quickly." Unfortunately, his voice was drowned out by the sound effects of Ilfang's sword skill. The Kobold King's huge body shook the floor as it jumped up high. It turned its body in mid-air while accumulating power to its weapon. As it fell down, it used the accumulated power, releasing a crimson beam of light that slashed everyone surrounding the boss, with a blood-red effect that remained in the air momentarily. "Like that one?" Asuna timidly asked. "Like that one?" the blonde replied with a grim nod. 6 bright red light effects appeared, like pillars of blood. The HP gauge that appeared at the left corner showing Group C's average HP on the left immediately dropped below 50% and into the yellow zone. Although you could expand the gauge with your fingertips in order to see the 6 individual HP gauges of each player, at the moment there was no point in doing it. Everyone in Group C obviously received equal amounts of damage. It was a ranged attack with tremendous power enough to take out more than half of their full HP, and that was not all. Yellow lights shaped like stars rotated around the heads of 6 people that had collapsed on the floor, indicating that they were unable to move for a period of time. Proof that they had all been stunned. "Protect them. I'll kill him." A blue-haired knight, his hair flowing in the wind, declared bravely as he surged forward to take on the boss alone. Team C, Egil and his subordinates moved forward, axe or shield held upwards to ward off a cleave from the massive katana, while the knight, barely even reaching Ilfang's knees, darted forward alone and began to stab at the unprotected belly. "What are you doing, fool? Retreat and regroup. You don't know what you're up against." Kirito yelled involuntarily as he ran forward, watching in slow motion as the boss seemed to smile and lift the katana high up into the sky and brought the glowing blue blade mercilessly. Diable jumped sideways, a momentary triumphant grin on his face that was wiped off instantly when the ground underneath him exploded, launching him into the sky violently. Yukifune didn't do much damage, but it was cleaving type attack whose special ability was to send everything in front of the attacker tumbling into the sky. It was nothing but the starting point of a deadly combo. By then, they already knew that Diable couldn't be saved as the Kobold Lord withdrew the blade into a ready position, Hyogi, a 3-hit air combo that juggled everything in front of the user. It was not possible to avoid this attack once one was already caught by Yukifune, only helplessly accept his malice. Everybody stared helplessly, rooted to the spot in shock and horror as their leader was hit violently. "Asuna. Hoo-ha. The female rapier user asked shakily as she looked down at where a kneeling blonde was pulling out spear after spear and laying them on the floor until he was surrounded by them. "Can you help Kirito? Keep him alive until I'm done." He replied urgently, focused entirely on getting ready. "So sure." Firming her resolve, she dashed forward in a burst of speed that far surpassed anything either Kirito or Naruto were capable of, eliciting an admiring smile from the blonde as he threw off his heavy cloak with a heavy breath to help him focus. He shifted the massive object on his back and slammed its end down onto the ground with a grunt, its heaviness cracking the paved floor with a loud thud. It was a massive block of wood that had been carved into a crude crescent moon that was thinnest around the middle. A piece of elastic rope connected the two curved points. The hunter lay 2 steps from hell strength of 1,000 men. Kirito skidded beside the fallen knight on his knees and gripped Diable's shoulder tightly, the structure under his fingers slowly crumbling with a sad feeling. The knight gave one last smile. I'm sorry for being so selfish, I was too focused on getting the last attack instead of you." "Enough, don't talk." Kirito frantically fumbled in his jersey to pull out a potion. Save your potions." His eyes weakly glanced at the HP gauge above his head that was slowly declining, and he knew that nothing would save him at this point save a HP crystal which were only available after the 5th floor. It's already too late. Kirito-kun, please defeat the boss in my place." The serene look on his face as he finally left Anchored was heart-rending. The fiery feeling flowed through Kirito's veins as he slowly stood up, the hand gripping his sword trembling with a burning anger. He heard someone step up beside him. "Joker asked me help you. He needs some time to get ready." Jet black eyes, burning with anger, looked at the hooded girl standing steadily beside him. "Understood. I'll be relying on you." The two of them shared a look and leapt forward without any hesitation, yelling their anger and defiance at the grinning Elfang. Asuna, running by his side, violently grasped her hood and cape that were in the way and flung it off her body. The light from countless torches that were the side walls seemed to gather together and shine brightly. Her glossy, long chestnut-colored hair now emitted a deep golden shine, scattering the dim light in the boss's room. "This battle will be similar to the ones with the sentinels, switch and keep up the attacks." He raised his voice and bellowed, "Everyone that needs to heal, back 10 steps towards the exit. As long as the boss is not surrounded, it will not use its ranged attacks. Anyone that can help, do so in pairs, but make sure you don't surround the boss." "Understood." The boss lowered his stance as he realized that 2 players were getting ready to attack him again and gripped his Nadachi, causing it to glow a deep green, slashing at a speed which could not be seen. Straight long-ranged move, Whirlwind Tsujikaze. Because it was an II type move, it would be impossible to keep up with it after seeing it launched, unless. Kirito held his breath and moved his right hand to his left hip as well, leaning forward as if to fall. The moment his body reached a certain angle, he stomped his right foot to take off. Without any hesitation, his body was wrapped in a thin blue light as he blew through the remaining 10 meters between him and the boss with incredible speed. Basic sword rush technique, Rage Spike, intercepting the Tsujikaze before it was launched and stunning the boss momentarily, switch. Asuna, grabbing the opportunity with remarkable grace, leapt up into the air with a cry, her rapier poised perfectly as it emitted a brilliant red light, launching rapid thrusts again and again straight at the Kobold Lord's face in the time that Kirito had bought her. Gracefully she spun the rapier around and dug it into the boss's torso on her way down, cutting a long red line that bled sparks. Without hesitation, Kirito resettled his pose and slashed, catching the Nadachi by the hilt, gritting his jaw to stop his teeth from rattling due to the force from the collision. A quick glance told him that even though the attack had been blocked, the sheer power behind it had managed to take a sliver of his HP, switch. Hi. Taking the advantage to gulp down a potion, Kirito took the time to take stock of the situation, widening his eyes in panic as more and more people gathered their confidence and began to attack the boss in droves. "I said stay back. You just want to get the last attack, don't you? Even sacrificing Diable to get it, I won't let you. If you can do it, so can anyone." A familiar Kansai dialect caused the anger to burn deep inside him. The kobold seemed to understand and a wide-fanged grin appeared as it made laughing noises. It drew back his Nadachi and leapt into the air far too agilely for anything of its size was meant to, leaving a circle of shocked players on the ground. Damn. Retreat. This order came too late as the massive kobold landed in a whirlwind of blades, slashing everything nearby, including him, and sending them crashing into the walls and ground with pained screams. The quick look told him that he had only managed to get away in time to take 1/3 of the base damage, but as soon as HP had already reached the red zone, Asuna. Get away. He yelled uselessly as he realized that they were all stunned and completely unguarded. Asuna obviously struggling to move her limbs and failing miserably between pants. The Kobold Lord seemed to smile again as it lifted up the Nadachi, aiming for the person with the greatest hate, Asuna. Rust. A red streak burned through the air, its point meeting the Nadachi's blade with a massive explosion of sparks, its force successfully throwing the Kobold Lord backwards just as the stun effect wore off. Without pausing, he threw Asuna a red potion and looked backwards to find his helper. That was when he realized that the last member of his team, dressed in nothing but simple cloth armor, was holding some sort of wooden contraption crescent steady with one hand as he fitted another spear into its middle. Gripping the butt of the spear in one hand, Naruto sighted down the shaft as it began to glow red, signaling the start of a basic sword skill, the veins in his arms standing out as he pulled back, the rope and wooden crescent straining against his strength. "What the fuck is that?" Kirito yelled just as the blonde released his grip on the spear, sending another red comet straight into the Kobold Lord's shoulder with another massive explosion, causing it to stagger again. "Faster, faster, faster," Naruto mumbled, a bead of sweat running down his temples unnoticed due to his concentration as he sent spear after spear into the Kobold Lord's abdomen, knocking the monster back, bit by bit. Naruto gave a strained grin as he refitted another spear, "Isn't it obvious? It's a bow." "Ow my ass, that thing is more like a frigging ballista, isn't it? Details, details. By the way." "What? Duck, you retard. Is that what you're supposed to say to someone that's about to die?" A raven-haired boy screamed back as he hit the floor. The blood-red light flashed right above, barely cutting off a few strands of black hair on its way to its target. The blazing spear pierced the right eye of the Kobold Lord. Last boss of the first floor. It teetered for a moment before falling over backwards with a massive rumble, entering the tumble state. "It's down. Everyone get his ass before he gets up." "Uohhh." Everybody who was still standing roared and began chopping the downed monster. This was a gamble. If the Kobold King's HP was reduced to nothing before it got up, it would be our victory. If it gets out of the TUMBLE status first, we would be met with TSUMUJIGURUMA again, and this time everyone would be cut down. Kirito glanced at his sword, Sonic LEAP was in the middle of the COOLING period, so he would be unable to deal attacks in the air. Simultaneously, he realized that Naruto's bow was not capable of stopping attacks like normal sword skills, despite the incredible damage he was apparently capable of. Bejel's group, who had recovered from the delay of their techniques, began to get into the motions for the next skills. The Kobold King stopped struggling at the same time and its body started to rise. "We are not going to make it." Gritting his teeth, Naruto hefted the bow onto his shoulder as he began jogging forwards, the strength parameter already hitting the red zone with just that, Asuna. "Kirito. One last one. Osu. Hi." Naruto upped to the chocolate-skinned man without pause, "Sorry about this, Bejel," and stepped on his bald head, jumping straight up into the air above the rising Ilfang, acrobatically wedging his legs at both edges and pulling back a spear with both hands and all his strength as Kirito and Asuna carved their way up the Kobold Lord's body. "God, let this hittt." The spear glowed a deep blue, signaling the start of the mid-range spear skill that required two hands, pierce, and Naruto released the spear, the backlash snapped his bow and sent him flying off into a corner violently, crashing in a crumpled heap. The blue spear rocketed downwards, burying itself deep into the Kobold Lord's forehead. Instead of stopping there, it began drilling its way all the way through, bursting through the other side with a spray of red blood, just as his two teammates slashed their way across Ilfang's eyes. On his back, the blonde groaned with his eyes closed as the chamber shook and rumbled like it had been hit by a minor earthquake, only releasing a relieved sigh when he heard the sound of something crumbling apart. The floating screen appeared above his face. "Congratulations, you have obtained the last hit." "We did it, Naruto." The blonde endured the uncomfortable and weird sensation of every bone in his body being rattled violently due to the crash as he heard Kirito yelling. Without getting up, he lifted one shaking hand and gave his partner a victory sign. "The hunter. The hunter." Kirito grinned as he held out a hand to the panting blonde who was still on his back. "Good job, bastard. Nice shooting." Naruto snorted and grabbed the offered hand, slowly pulling himself up, "So you can smile. I was beginning to wonder if your mom dropped you on your face as a baby or something." That aside, he looked at the smashed remains of his great bow laying around his feet and sighed at the amount of effort he was going to have to put in if he wanted a new one. "I'm going to need a new bow," he grumbled. All around the two men, the players began clapping and hollering in joy as reality set in. They had finally defeated the first floor boss of Aincrad, the first floor that had single-handedly confined more than 8,000 players in it for 2 months had been broken through. "We cleared it. We unlocked the second floor." The metaphorical wall that had never seemed more impenetrable, standing high and tall, monstrously strong even after 2 months of effort, had finally broken down, allowing a single bright ray of hope to shine through the rubble. It gave them hope that getting out of SAO and getting back to real life wasn't just a hopeless dream. Why is everyone clapping? Those two people sacrificed Diable just so they could get the last hit. He turned to the spectators, inciting them with wild gestures, and that blonde has a special hidden skill that he kept to himself. That proves that everything he said during the meeting was a lie. How can you expect us to trust his words when he is lying like that? Right. The single voice of dissension broke through the happy cheering. The quiet murmuring began replacing the happy cheers, and both of them could feel the stares of 45 people prickling the back of their necks with resentment. I'm beginning to really dislike that Kansai dialect. The blonde mumbled as he sagged against the wall, slowly gathering his stamina again. Agreed. Asuna appeared between her teammates, one hand placed on her hip with a scrunched-up expression on her face. What's the big deal about this last hit thing? Last hit was the act of scoring the decisive hit on a monster, granting the attacker and his team a greater chance of obtaining item drops and kernel from the defeated monster. Experience was usually proportionally divided amongst everybody who participated in battle, meaning the team who did the most damage would obtain the lion's share of the experience. In this case, Ilfang. Naturally, as a unique monster boss, the Kobold Lord would drop highly valued and unique equipment that couldn't be obtained anywhere else. He glanced at the temporary inventory space from his menu, eyes rapidly shifting through the items stored there, waiting to be distributed amongst himself, Kirito and Asuna. Scratching the back of his head, Naruto wearily got up, feeling strangely weak as the adrenaline surge left his bloodstream, while Kirito began explaining the concept of a last hit to the girl in hushed tones. Even if his real body wasn't here and any damage done to his avatar could be easily healed by potions or crystals, mental fatigue represented a real danger to any SAO player. A simple lapse of concentration was more often than not more lethal than any blade considering the amount of hand, eye and mental coordination that the game required to activate sword skills. It was worse for him compared to most players because trying to get his spears to fly in a straight line, much less even hit something, really wasn't as easy as it looked. He accidentally shot his own foot off once. It wasn't something he liked to talk about. Someone else yelled angrily, a scimitar user from Diable's Group C behind him. The other members of the team looked haunted and disheveled, glaring at the archer and the swordsman with unveiled anger and accusing eyes. Kai Kibeu-san's right, I heard him shouting before Diable-san died. These people, they already knew the skills the boss used. If only you gave that information at the start, Diable-san wouldn't have died. One of them even has a special skill that he didn't use until it was too late. If he had used it sooner, Diable-san wouldn't have died, right? Right. Yeah. Tell us how you got that skill. It's not fair that you alone have it. The other one too, he's a beta tester like the blonde guy. Helping people out my ass, they're just pretending to be the good guys while they hide all the best spots for experience and equipment to themselves. Their wrath was interrupted by the mace user who had served as a tank with Egil until the end. He raised his hand honestly and said in a calm tone. Even so, the guide that was handed out yesterday, it was written that it was only information on the boss's attack pattern during the beta period, right? If he was really a beta tester, wouldn't his knowledge be the same as in the guide? It was obvious there was no chance for him to realize that the attack pattern had changed until the boss pulled out that big-ass Nadachi. Ah, that is. The ratty-looking man shook his fist in denial, thought that strategy guide was a lie. Argo's information shop was selling lies. That person was a beta tester after all, there's no way she would have given us the truth for free. They're all just helping each other, these damn beta testers. Spiteful words like that hammered on their conscience. Gritting his teeth, the weary blonde tried to get up and argue, only to wobble on his feet unsteadily as the world spun around him, causing the black-haired swordsman and Asuna to dart to his sides, supporting him by grabbing onto his arms. Ah, thanks. No worries. Asuna, can you support him by yourself? Yes, but what are you going to do? Kirito grinned bitterly and said lowly, he saved us once already, so I guess it's my turn to be the hero. Slowly stepping forward, he began laughing lowly, you guys sure are idiots. Kirito threw the staggering blonde a look, hidden skill. Don't make me laugh, there are far more power skills on the higher level that only the elite can get. That skill is nothing but looks, all talk and no walk. Every single player present, save his teammates, were now staring at him in shock as he continued speaking in a condescending, contemptuous tone. And don't compare someone like me to those idiots like that, the blonde and normal beta testers. Among that 1,000 players, how many of them were true MMORPG players like me do you think were selected? Most of them were just newbies that didn't even know the difference between the sharp end of a sword and its hilt. He surveyed all the shocked and pale players watching him, but I'm not like those guys. Kirito deliberately twisted his lips into a sneer, during the beta test, I reached floors that no one else could reach. I learned of the katana skills the boss used since I kept fighting mobs that used katanas from a floor way higher. I know way more other things too, there's no way even that Argo person could even match me. What is that? The person who first pointed me out as a beta tester, the ratty man from Group E, said out in a hoarse voice. That's no longer on the level of a beta tester, that's totally cheating, you are just a cheater. From around them, yeah. Cheater. Cheating beta tester. Many voices spewed those dissatisfied words harshly. Those words were soon mixed up together, in the end a strange sounding word, beater, reached my ears. Beater, that has a good ring to it. Laughing and grinning, the black-haired man looked around at everybody in that area and told them in a clear voice, exactly, I am a BATR from now on, please do not lump me together with those former testers. Selecting a black cloak from the temporary inventory shared between his teammates, he equipped it with a flourish. The dark gray leather coat that he had worn up till now was replaced by the unique equipment dropped by the boss just a moment ago, the coat of midnight. The ragged brown tunic was replaced by a shiny jet black leather cloak, its length long enough for the hem reach his knees. I'll go on and activate the second floor's transfer gate. From the exit up there it will be a short walk to the district town, if you want to come along, be prepared to be killed by any mob that comes along. With those ominous and elitist words, Kiryat began walking up the narrow spiral staircase towards the wooden door set in the wall behind Ilfang's throne. As the players watched him leave, a new voice joined the conversation, ragged and resigned yet resolute, all of you are truly fools. Tired of being talked down to, the cactus had apparently hit his limit when he aggressively stepped forward with his fists raised and an expression of pure anger on his thuggish face. The golden-haired man who had left Asuna's embrace sighed, stepped the charge and slugged him across the face with all his remaining strength, throwing Kibeyu onto the ground with a loud crack. Above him, the marker turned orange because of his assault on another player. It makes me sad to see all of you so petty, he pointed at the cactus head groaning on the floor with a lazy finger, especially idiots like you. You claim that we should lead you, teach you, yet when Kirito was telling everybody not to surround the boss and whittle away at his HP in small teams, what in fuck's name caused you to disregard the orders of someone that obviously knows more than you and charge in, endangering the lives of you and your equally retarded team just for some items? Level 5 items. Out of 100. Kibeyu's group stared at their feet, looking slightly embarrassed. And my skill, yeah, I didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't even know if it would work, it wasn't even field tested yet. You want the skill so badly. Buy the next guidebook. It'll be there for you ungrateful idiots to copy, assuming any of you are skilled enough to use it anyway. If that wasn't bad enough, you then try and lynch the beta testers, the very same people who have the experience and knowledge we need to clear the game faster. Congratulations, almost every single one of you here have almost single-handedly ensured that no beta tester will ever willingly stick his neck out for any you ever again, because even he does, he just risks it being cut off by you, instead of by monsters. Reaching into his inventory, the blonde flung his hands out with a distasteful look, throwing sacks of kernel and equipment onto the ground with a loud clatter. These are my share of the boss drops. You can have them. Maybe squabbling over them will keep all of you busy long enough for us to clear this god-forsaken game. The blonde gave everyone a fierce glare, huffing in satisfaction when he had determined that they were suitably chastised. Tiredly donning the last remaining piece of equipment in his inventory, Windwalker's cloak, a long trench coat similar to the coat of midnight, only with an open front, made of flowing pure white cloth that granted minimal protection, but significantly increased his movement speed, the blonde began climbing the staircase without another word. The hunter. Kirito slowly climbed up the spiral staircase that led to the next floor, paying particular attention to black stone steps through fuzzy vision, as his own adrenaline surge wore off when he missed a step and slipped. Wobbling over backwards, Kirito closed his eyes and internally prepared himself to be extremely humiliated after tumbling all the way back down after a flashy exit when someone's palm was placed at the small of his back, stopping him from toppling all the way back down with a grunt. Oi, you know what happens when a tired man leans on another tired man, right? He recognized the voice and let out a small chuckle. What the heck are you doing here? You were supposed to agree with the rest that I was a complete bastard and let me take the heat. Who the heck is supposed to watch your back then? I can take care of myself. Kirito replied shortly. Oh definitely, the perfect way you almost broke your neck by oh so gracefully falling off the staircase was absolutely convincing argument. Imogen Ak. The strength left Naruto's knees and both of them began wobbling over backwards, windmilling their arms uselessly to regain balance when a giggling girl grabbed both of their arms and pulled them back onto the steps with a huff. You're both idiots. Asuna declared with her hands on her hips and a half smile on her lips, golden brown hair flowing and the slight breeze blowing from the open door. Asuna. Naruto gave the ridiculously energetic girl a weird look. What? You do realize that we just fought, non-stop, for nearly 5 hours, right? How on God's green earth are you still so active? Really? I don't really feel any different, I guess. I mean, yeah, I'm tired, but at least I'm not tripping while standing still. What are you smoking and where can I get some? The brown-haired girl slapped the back of Naruto's head as she took a seat between the two males, while the black-haired boy rolled his eyes. "Stop making stupid jokes like that." The blonde chuckled and pulled out some black bread and meat that he shared with the other two. The three of them quietly munched their lunch in companionable silence on the steps with the portal to the second floor, barely 2 meters behind them. "Shouldn't we at least go open the teleporter or something?" Asuna mumbled through her meat sandwich. The other two shared a look and replied simultaneously with silly grins, "Too tired, those idiots can wait." Asuna rolled her eyes at their idiocy before something occurred to her and thrust her face in front of the blonde, positively burning with curiosity. "That reminds me, how did you manage get a bow? I thought only melee-type weapons were available in SAO, that's what the pamphlet said anyway." The blonde poked her nose and slowly pushed her face away from his lunch with an amused smile, before returning to picking his sandwich apart slowly. "That's not exactly true, there are minor ranged weapons, but most of them are generally used as secondary support skills, since they don't really do much damage. I simply exploited the vague way the system classifies ranged weapons." He explained simply. Kirito narrowed his eyes at the explanation. "That sounds a lot like you know how the system's code works." "You might say that." Naruto nodded vaguely before turning back to an attentive Asuna. "You see, SAO was the first game of its kind and boasted of an extremely detailed environment to ensure maximum immersion in the game. What that really means is that the programmers did their best to make the in-game laws of physics mimic that of real life, like gravity for instance. What this boils down to is that there are any number of ways to reach your goal, as long as you are creative enough to operate within the system's limits." He paused and swallowed another bite and a sip of water from a bamboo container. "First off, you have to know that all weapons are generally divided into 4 categories: thrust type like your rapier, smash type like maces, slashing types like swords and axes, and finally piercing types like my spears. The finer details are unique to each weapon, but that's beside the point. Under those 4 main categories is another subcategory: throwing weapons. Take for instance, picks and flying hatchets. Despite clearly being throwing weapons, picks are also categorized as spears and throwing axes are mini-axes, so the throwing weapon skill set actually applies to all 4 categories as a whole, and one can even use a pick as a spear if he wanted to. Most people just don't know it because, well, who in the world will throw a massive axe or spear? There's one idiot right here." Kirito commented dryly, already understanding where this was going. "Well, yeah, pretty much." Naruto chuckled. "Anyway, the damage of a throwing weapon is determined by 3 things. The dexterity stat, the skill multiplier itself, and how hard it is thrown. Since axes and spears are pretty heavy, there's no way anyone can throw them hard enough, plus it's a waste to throw a perfectly good weapon away like that, which is sort of why I stuck to using beginner spears. In other words, you compensate for your own lack of strength using that stupidly large bow. That's about the gist of it." Naruto nodded easily. "Problem is, how did you manage to make that bow?" The black-haired boy responded curiously. "Well, that's the second part of the exploit. You've played the game before, Kirito. Now tell me, how does the crafting system work in the game?" The nonplussed Kirito seemed to ponder the question for a moment before it dawned on him. "Wood crafting." "Bingo." The blonde cheerfully slapped Kirito's back. Wait, what about wood crafting?" A confused Asuna interrupted pitifully with cheeks that puffed up adorably. Kirito felt that it reminded him of his hamster, begging for food when it was hungry. Though he refrained from speaking his mind out loud, he still laughed at the girl's uncharacteristic curiosity. Amongst the crafting skills available like blacksmithing or even tailoring, wood crafting is different because it's used for crafting furniture instead of equipment like tailoring and blacksmithing. Using those 2 skills is basically just involves putting the raw material on a table and tapping it until it becomes a randomized piece of equipment according to the blacksmith's or tailor's skill level. Wood crafting, like cooking, is different in that there are no set patterns. One can create anything they want out of the raw materials according to their imagination, and skill level only influences the quality of the material that you are allowed to use. Apparently no one else realized that it could be used for more than furniture. The idiot here, he gestured at the blonde who was on his back resting, basically just carved out a piece of furniture that is shaped like a bow, stuck a piece of string on it, and then literally used it like a bow, along with spears as big-ass arrows. When you combine that with the spear's high base damage, the fact that he managed to negate the spear's slow attack speed and 0 cooldown period because he's basically throwing them instead of using them like normal spears, and the throwing weapon's damage multiplier. It means that we're basically sitting next to Sword Art Online's version of a one-man heavy artillery. Naruto proudly puffed up his chest at the title. Of course there are quite a few setbacks to it that I can see right off the bat. Kirito muttered excitedly, causing the blonde to deflate comically with anime tears. It's got to be ridiculously hard to aim with that thing, because there is no system support for that function, unlike normal sword skills. In other words, it will have to be an innate skill, and because of the movement speed penalty for equipping using heavy long-range weapons. I'm pretty sure you are nothing but a glorified sitting duck while you're shooting. Movement penalties? Sitting duck? Kirito scratched the back of his head. All weapons have their general advantages and disadvantages. Like my sword, it is flexible and versatile in any situation, but equipping it will cost me 10% movement speed, and their base damage is nothing to write home about, though we compensate by being able to attack many more times than a spear within the same time span. Rapiers have some of the lowest base damage in exchange for being able to attack faster than any other weapon, and have no movement speed penalties at all, though they also completely lack any sort of AoE skills to deal with multiple monsters. Spears, large axes, halberds, pole arms on the other hand, have high base damage and a wide sweeping range, but they inflict a 40% movement speed penalty. Armors have similar restrictions. Heavy armor like plate mail costs 30% movement speed, but gives the best amount of defense. Light armor like chainmail gives less armor, some evasion, and only inflicts a 20% movement speed penalty. Cloth armor on the other hand, he tapped on his tunic, only takes away 10% movement speed and gives little to no defense at all, in return for massive evasion boosts. The brown-haired girl thoughtfully chewed on her bottom lip for a moment, so assuming someone uses heavy armor and a pole arm, we're looking at someone with high defense and base damage per hit at a cost of a 70% movement speed penalty. Pretty much. The enigmatic blonde answered easily, we call those kinds of characters tanks. Fast-moving characters with good damage per second are sweepers and those in the middle of the spectrum, trading the two extremes for versatility are supporters. Naruto added conversationally, by the way, you and Kirito are considered sweepers, while I'm technically a supporter. That's only because you can't move properly though. Besides, anything weaker than a semi-boss more or less goes down in one hit when you blow its brains out with your spear from a range. Anything stronger and you'll be in a party with a dedicated tank to take the attention away from you anyway. As long as you can find a way to fix that speed problem, I'm willing to bet my college savings that there won't be anybody around that can outdamage that stupidly huge bow of yours. I'm starting to hate morphs. This is more complicated than university-level math. There are so many stupid variables. Naruto petted a pouting Asuna's head with a wide grin, relax, take your time understanding this stuff. No one said you had to be an instant expert. As long as you stay alive, there's always another chance to come back again, better, stronger and wiser. You can't do anything anymore once you're dead. Naruto observed gravely, speaking of which, we better get going. It's going to be dark soon, and I don't want to be stuck outside of the safety zone when night falls, especially since I feel like I'm buck-ass nude without my bow. Agreed. Except the nude part. Kirito nodded and the two of them hefted their equipment up. Asuna. Aren't you coming? The two blinked in concern. Hey, are you alright? Your nose is bleeding all over the place. And why is your face so red? Are you sick? The questions jolted the brown-haired girl back into consciousness and she desperately tried to stem the blood flow from her nose. I'm alright. You just go ahead without me. I'll catch up. Kirito scratched the back of his head in worry. We will if you're sure, just follow the path, there's only one way from here to town anyway. Oh okay. I'll be fine. Okay. We'll be waiting for you at the only inn in town, we can decide what we want to do after this there. Spurt. Asuna. Why are you bleeding even more? She clamped her hands on her nose. It's nothing. The two of you are going to be in the same room? Is there a problem with that? We'll get you a different room of course. She frantically waved her hands with a strangled smile. No. No problem. Spurt, now get out of here. Okay? What's wrong with her? Naruto muttered as he started jogging at a brisk pace. Why are you asking me? The only females I know personally are my sister and mother. Kirito grumbled in embarrassment. You think I cooked that meat wrongly or something? I dunno, tasted alright to me. Must be a girl thing. As the two reluctantly left the only female member of their team and ran along the beaten path, Kirito quietly sent Naruto a private message. By the way, you do realize that the exploit means that you're not the only one that is capable of using bows, right? If someone else finds out, we'd have quite a few bow-wielding idiots running around. The blonde shrugged. I know I was going to ask Argo to publish the exploit in her book anyway. The only reason I didn't do so beforehand was because I needed to test it out in actual combat. Up till then I was only testing it out on dummies and static targets. What? Why? You should keep it a secret. What if someone uses it for bad reasons? The raven-haired swordsman protested harshly. The blonde shook his head. I'm not looking to get an award or anything. I just want to free everyone from the game and go home. He gave Kirito a significant glance. I'm not saying that what you are suggesting is wrong, but I have to help. I just can't stand around and focus on myself. Aincrad, saw the deaths of 2,000 people, part of it was my fault, and getting them out as soon as possible is the only way I know how to atone for it. As for being misused, I'll deal with it as it comes, I guess. Silently, the black-haired swordsman considered the blonde's words and his earlier suspicions. Does this have anything to do with the fact that you knew how the system's coding worked? He received no reply from the blonde. Figuring that he was uncomfortable with revealing anything more, Kirito steadfastly kept his focus on the road, allowing their black and white cloaks to flap silently in their slipstream. Yo, Kiribu. Rudo. Both of them skidded to a halt as a small girl, her height was only enough to reach Kirito's shoulder, much less the taller Naruto's height. A pair of whiskers on each cheek, clearly drawn with black ink, stretched as she greeted the two men with a wide grin as shameless as her black merchant soul. This small girl, who resembled a rat, was Argo, the information dealer and publisher of the guidebook. I'd ask how you managed to get past us and reach the second floor before either of us, but I don't think I can pay the price. Naruto dryly noted with a smirk. Nishishihi, good guess, Rudo. By the way, it's 1000 Colonel Sa. So? What do you need from us? It's not like you to look for us. Usually you make us look for you. This time it was Kirito's turn to comment dryly, already too used to the information dealer's antics. Well, I kinda need a favor. You see, I'm being chased by two idio. I keep telling you that if you don't stop being so creepy and calculating, you would regret it one day, didn't I? Naruto cut in with a sarcastic grin. What did you scam from them this time? You. I'm an information dealer. I don't do scams, Deo. Argo began ranting in the middle of the road but stopped when she realized that the blonde was deliberately teasing her when he began guffawing out loud. Ignoring the idiot beside me for a moment, we'll help, but what's in it for us? Not to mention, how are we supposed to protect you from them? I don't plan on being an orange player anytime soon. Kirito spoke up as he began slowly scanning the area for any sign of the two people that were supposedly chasing Argo. Well, I was thinking about hiding behind the infamous White Archer and the Black Swordsman that defeated the first floor boss magnificently. That was way too fast. Kirito face-palmed, though he knew full well that the titles weren't meant to be complimentary at all, quite the opposite actually, news of that already spread. Not to mention they already began giving us weird nicknames. Don't forget Asuna, there's a third member in our team. Naruto finished the sentence with a chuckle. There was a third person. Weird. No one said anything about him or her. Thankfully. Asuna doesn't need people like us bringing her down. Naruto gave his somewhat grim opinion. Let's continue the original topic first, why can't you just hide in town? It's not that far from here now. Kirito jerked his chin down the beaten path that led into a valley. The second floor town, Urbis, was located right on the other side of the valley, although as the sun began to set behind the nearest mountain, Kirito realized the true reason. We were too late. It's night already. The monsters in the valley will become more aggressive and numerous, and I don't have any weapons with me right now. And to make things worse, Asuna still isn't here yet. Naruto muttered, seeing the really bad predicament they were currently in. Lucky for you too, I can solve all those problems. For a price of course, Argo the rat sing-song cheerfully as she took advantage of their situation. You already asked for protection, that's the price. We have already implicitly agreed, now what's the solution? Merchant's pride, don't go back on the deal now. Naruto immediately shot with a grin. For the first time since meeting the Argo the rat, who always full of smart-ass comebacks that enabled the short girl that was perpetually swathed in a brown full-body cloak to always have the last word, Kirito finally saw what she looked like when she was dumbfounded, and it was absolutely glorious. Cursing like someone had killed her pet kitten when she finally realized that she had been duped, Argo the rat just jerked her head towards a small, unbeaten path through the bushes on their left. There's a safe zone where we can wait until morning arrives. The path there doesn't have that many monsters, so we should be fine. Incidentally, the solution for Bakuruto's problem is also there, the quest NPC for the hidden skill martial arts. I rushed here as soon as I heard Ilfang was defeated to confirm if it was still there from the beta, but two idiots ambushed me before I could get back to town, and I can't risk going back into the safety zone without ensuring that they don't see me. Why don't you just tell them where it is? That way they will leave you alone, and it will benefit the frontliners in the long run. Naruto questioned lowly. Argo hesitated. 1. The NPC can only give out the quests a limited number of times, meaning less than 10 people will ever get this skill. I can't just let some half-assed ninja wannabes get them and waste them. And 2, she hesitated. You'll see why when we get there. It's a problematic matter that deeply concerns my pride, Deo. Understood. Now we just need to wait for the third member of our group to get here. You like her, I'm sure. He paused and made a face. Anyone have any peanuts? I really need something to nibble on right now. The hunter. Play Unaito trust you. Asuna and Argo giggled delightedly at the incredibly disgruntled look on the blonde and the raven-haired boy, compounded of course by the fact that they both had rat-like whiskers, similar to the ones on Argo's cheek, decorating their own faces. Well, to be precise, Kirito had whiskers. The old NPC had given Naruto ridiculously childish-looking swirls and a pig's nose after he had accidentally insulted the NPC that, appropriately enough, looked like an old kung fu master. After warding off two idiotic-looking ninjas and a breathless Asuna had arrived and agreed to the detour, the two of them had taken the forest path as indicated by Argo, clambered up a cliff, down into an underground cave on the other side, and then up another cliff until they had arrived at the top of the highest mountain in the forest range. True enough, despite the 30-minute-long journey, the path had been quiet and safe, except for 3 small encounters which were disposed off easily enough with Kirito's sword and Asuna's rapier. When they had arrived at the top of the mountain, a very tired blonde had began cursing the skies, loudly wondering which retard was dumb enough to stay in a god-forsaken place like this. Needless to say, the old NPC who had just walked out of the tiny shack behind Naruto to greet the visitors had heard every single word and hadn't taken it very nicely. In fact, he had immediately painted the blonde's face without a single word, or even without either of them initiating the quest. The blonde was, in a word, horrified. "They're so cute." Asuna crooned with a wide grin before turning to the giggling rat beside her, "Don't you think so, Argo-chan?" Kirito began banging his face on the table, rattling the ceramic cups of tea in front of them with each bang, while Naruto gave her a pointed glare. "I swear to God, I'll do not tell anyone about this." "No wonder you wouldn't sell the information. If you accept the quest, there's no option to cancel unless you want to have these marks permanently drawn on your face. And to pass we have to break that stupidly huge rock with just our hands. Damn you, Naruto. Damn you, you're the only person I know that can somehow piss off an NPC of all damn things." A muffled voice came from the face-down Kirito, causing Asuna to burst into crystal-clear laughter once more. Can we take pictures in SAO, Argo-chan?" "Of course, I happen to have a few special items for recording images or sounds with me right now. I'll even let you have one for free, Asuna-chan." "Wait. Free? What happened to Argo, the information dealer who doesn't even know what the word free means?" Naruto demanded loudly. It's because I'm in such a good mood today. Besides," she began giggling creepily, "an eye for an eye, right, Bakuruto?" was Argo's sinister reply. Kirito began banging the table with his face again. "This is all your fault. This is entirely your fault. You couldn't stop pissing an NPC off. You had to piss Argo off as well. Imagine, the white archer and the black swordsman in the newspaper, then underneath those fearsome titles are these pictures." SNRRK. Asuna buried her face in her hands, desperately trying not to burst out laughing in a completely unladylike manner. "Ahahaha." She failed. "Aren't you two getting along a little too well?" the two males cried out comically. "The hunter." Naruto carefully chipped off the edges of a block of wood that he had obtained by asking Kirito to cut down a solid tree that they found at the bottom of the mountain, not that it would really matter seeing as how he lacked any spears to use it with at the moment. "Hey, white archer." A teasing voice interrupted his carving, causing him to look up, thankful for the pitifully low and flickering light that the single candlelight provided enough for him to carve with, but not enough for anyone to see the scribbling on his face. "Oh, Asuna, what's up?" he asked lowly as he went back to shaving the square block of wood, bit by bit. "I was just bored. Kirito's outside punching that rock and Argo-chan sleeping, so there wasn't much for me to do." She set down the platter she had been carrying, a steaming mug of tea on it. Naruto quirked an amused eyebrow as his hands continuously carved into the wood despite his lack of attention, speaking of long experience and practice. "You don't get the wrong idea, I just wanted to thank you and Kirito for helping me. That idiot has one too." "I didn't even say anything," the blonde pointed out, "but thank you, although I don't think we did anything worthy of thanks." Asuna turned away and sat down on the stool on the other side of the room, watching the blonde steadily whittle down the piece of wood with an intense demeanor, humming quietly for a contemplative moment before speaking again. "You might not think so, but not many people would give a quiet, gloomy stranger a second look, much less welcome them in with open arms and teach them things that others consider trivial knowledge." She knew the feeling, Asuna mused. She had always been one of the star students in her class, things that others did not understand came to her easily. Sadly enough, she hadn't been graceful enough to help those that weren't as lucky or as patient. Even back then she had been aloof and gloomy. It was easy to see how badly she had acted now that she was on the receiving end. "That's still not really anything special. I want to get everyone out of the game as fast as possible. A lot of others do as well. You just haven't met them, wait until we hit the 3rd floor, that's when guilds can be made. Lots of them." Some dedicated to teaching newbies and helping them survive, others will be dedicated to clearing the game, will pop up like mushrooms by then. Just accept that I'm grateful, will you? She glared at him. I mean, I've never laughed like that before, it felt really good to just let go, well, we're with friends. She mumbled blushingly, causing the blonde to chuckle. What are you going to do when morning comes? He asked carefully, eyeing the girl while his hands carved non-stop. What do you mean? Burrito and I probably won't leave the mountain for a week at most. You can't stay with us doing nothing. Even then, after we go down, we'll more than likely separate. Neither of us are really the type of people to mesh well in long-term teams. Oh, I guess I'll head to Urbis with Argo-chan then. Naruto flinched slightly at the strangely sad reply before pulling out a small book that he handed to the girl. You'll be alright though. That book was written by me and Argo, it contains lots of tips and tricks to find the best places to stay, finding the most suitable spots to gain experience points, stuff like that, and as long as you stay with Argo, you'll be pretty safe. I think okay, I hope. I'll pray for you. She gave him a flat stare that made him chuckle uneasily. Do you carve a lot? She questioned idly as she flipped through the small book. I guess. My sister wasn't very healthy, so she spent a lot of time in the hospital. I used to carve all sorts of animals for her to play with in the hospitals. Naruto smiled softly, the nurses even began calling me the boy who carved since her entire room was almost full of them. Why was she in the hospital? Asuna asked with concern. Car accident. The blonde answered flatly. Oh, then it's no wonder you want to leave the game. You have sister waiting for you to come back, huh, Nai-chan? Asuna said with an envious smile. Naruto smiled bitterly, she went into a coma 6 years ago. The hunter. Play Lisa crossing field. 3 days later, 2 men, one dressed entirely in black and the other in white, finally entered Urbis, despite being the 2 out of 3 people that had defeated Ilfang. This is troublesome. We just missed the boss raid party, even though we rushed to finish that old man's quest to come down from that stupid mountain in time. That and I'm out of peanuts. Again. The one white said, shifting the massive quiver on his back that held a bucket load of spears. The second floor's boss is that lizard man, isn't it? His friend in black asked lowly. Naruto pulled up his menu to check the private message that Argo had sent him, yeah. Same skills from Beta, nothing visibly different, only equipped by a 2-handed pole arm and breath attacks. He sighed, should we try and catch up? They should have just started on him so we might be able to make it before he dies and at least help a little. Seeing the raven-haired boy respond with a simple nod, the 2 of them started running through the town at a surprisingly fast pace. It only took both of them 30 minutes to reach the towering black iron doors of the boss room, already hanging wide open to show an ongoing battle on the inside. The 2 of them stood hidden behind the shadows of the great door as they watched a pitched battle. Should we help? Naruto commented, idly running one finger up and down a spear as he watched about 2 full raid parties surround the boss, who was already down to 2 remaining HP gauges. 96 people. Not a bad turnout, don't think they're going to need our help. If I remember right, this guy was the easiest boss amongst all the rest. It doesn't look like they're winning though, unless them getting their asses handed to them is actually a secret strategy we don't know about. Naruto observed flatly as the lizard started pounding the ground wildly, sending anyone near him to the ground, coupled with a noxious gas that sent everyone into the poison status. Can I go home? Screw you. Oh well. The faster we finish this, the faster I can get my peanuts. Both of them began running towards the battle. Oi, Kirito, a little boost. The raven-haired boy nodded and dashed forward ahead of the blonde before spinning around in a crouched ready position, 2 hands clasped together. The running blonde leapt onto the clasped palms with 1 foot and pushed off with the added burst of power that his greatly boosted strength, increased by the passive bonuses that the hidden skill martial arts granted them. The maneuver threw him, his body as straight and tense as an arrow, nearly halfway up till the very top of the chamber when he flipped and released the quiver on his back, flinging all the spears into the air around him. On the ground, Kirito charged straight at the boss with his sword in a reverse grip, skidding to a stop right underneath the boss with a twist that sent him spinning with the momentum. The sword's blade began glowing with a massive red aura at the apex of the spin as the raven-haired boy came full circle with a bellow. Vorpal strike. The resulting explosive blast sent the 10-foot-tall lizard rocketing upwards into the air, twisting around at an awkward angle, futilely trying to regain its balance when it found himself eye-to-eye with the business ends of 9 glowing spears notched on the same stupidly huge bow. Original skill. Lunar Fang. By the time Naruto had landed with wet splat, his clothes were splattered in eyeball fluid and grayish brain matter. That really wasn't a good idea. He commented with distaste as he tried to squeeze the blood out of his scarf. You've never had a good idea. Period. Like that time you tried to break the rock with your head instead of your hands. It cracked, didn't it? I don't even know where to start expressing how stupid I think that reply was. Kirito rolled his eyes without another word as he began pouring status healing potions down the throats of poisoned and paralyzed players. It's them. The White Archer and the Black Swordsman. You probably should have left them paralyzed until we got out of here. Naruto concluded blandly as more and more people began chattering. The Hunter. The Hunter. 24th December 2022. The weather simulator that governed every gust of wind, every cloud and even the smallest variation of temperature on the virtual floating city of Anchorage was truly a magnificent piece of work. All the four seasons were generally synchronized with reality and was one of the few ways to keep time in Anchorage. The degree of accuracy in reproducing the weather depended on a ridiculously large amount of variables. Whether it was going to be a dry winter or a humid summer. In addition to the temperature outside, the system also considered rain and wind, moisture, dust level, and even insects gathering as parameters. The amount of work put into ensuring full immersion into making Anchorage as close to reality as possible was almost overwhelming. From a purely intellectual standpoint, Naruto could certainly admire the effort, however, as he rubbed his eyes blearily, wincing from the bright glare of the sunlight that had just woken him from a restful slumber, the blonde could only curse them for being so detailed. The cold breeze blew through the slightly open window, ruffling the soft golden hair on his scalp, causing him to shiver as the sleepy blonde turned off his alarm with a displeased sound. Now that he was cold, he knew there was no going back to sleep, giving in to the inevitable. The topless blonde reluctantly clambered out of the warmth and safety of his bed and stretched with a wide yawn. Scratching his abs blearily, he threw on a simple shirt in a pathetic attempt at decency before making his way to the small kitchen and put a kettle on the stove with a fluidity that spoke of familiarity, igniting the small stove with a tap of the menu. Minutes later, the kettle began whistling and the blonde took it off the stove and threw some herbs into the kettle. Setting it back down, he flicked his left hand, drawing down a menu from which he selected an option. Almost instantly, a rich earthy smell filled the small kitchen and the blonde happily poured a thick brown liquid into 3 mugs. He heard the sound of cloth rustling from behind him as the other inhabitant of his small shack, set on the 7th floor of Anchorage, Tarju, and jointly paid for by its inhabitants, woke up to the smell of coffee. It was small, cozy and plain house, each room was about as big as normal 8 tatami room in Tokyo, featuring a small bathroom, a kitchen and 3 rooms, built on the edges of the main city which 2 floors beneath the current frontline for Sao's clearers. A sleepy-looking Asuna made her way into the kitchen, looking as if the only thing keeping her conscious was her nose, which wasn't really that far from the truth. Yo. Morning. The blonde cheerfully greeted the half-lit girl with a grin, pushing the second mug across the counter towards her. It's a cold day, get some coffee before you leave. Yug was the sleepy reply as the brown-haired girl, dressed in a simple gown, meandered towards the blonde. Leaning into his side with a satisfied puff of her cheeks, she gratefully grabbed the mug with both hands, savoring both the warmth of the blonde she was leaning against and the warmth and smell of the coffee before practically inhaling the contents of the ceramic cup. Despite being in a game where everything was virtual and knowing that the caffeine was nothing but electrical messages selected from an archive to be sent to her brain through the nerve gear, the simulated earthy taste and the sensation of caffeine flowing through her veins was still more than enough to wake her up. It was something more of a habit rather than any real need for the black liquid. Then again, she never had this habit until Naruto finally managed to brew a decent cup of joe after much experimentation. Snake guts were never meant to be used that way, she remembered with another shiver. When the warmth of the coffee had seeped itself deep into her extremities, she let out a bone-deep sigh of happiness. Kirito's not awake yet. He came back late last night. I think he was training out again. The blonde muttered, peering into his cup. Asuna accepted the reply with a simple nod. It wasn't really that surprising. Despite staying in the same house, all 3 of them had their own quirks and preferences. The 2 men usually woke up early before going out to train alone, while she looked for a raid party or did quests with the other 2 when she needed help. More often than not, they would all then gather again at night for dinner before going back to bed. It was a stable and quiet life despite being stuck in life and death game, but she could not say that she disliked it. Going out in the morning, training and getting stronger and being greeted warmly when she came back with her body all sore, usually by the older blonde. It was a home and a cozy way of life that she really didn't dislike. I'll go get him. Asuna was jolted out of her cup of coffee when the blonde replied, only nodding with a smile, too lazy to say anything. Swirling the mug of coffee in one hand, the blonde shuffled his way to the last room in the house and was just about to turn the corner when the final member of their little household appeared, his raven hair tousled cutely, rubbing his eyes sleepily when he walked straight into a wall of muscle. Ack. The taller blonde immediately grabbed the black-haired boy around his waist to stop him from falling down on his butt. Oi, I know you're sleepy, but at least watch where you're going. He groused at the sleepy boy on his chest. Steadying himself with one hand on the blonde's chest, Kirito murmured an indistinct apology before heading straight for the mug on the table. When his eyes were finally properly opened by the fresh taste of the bitter brew, he quirked an eyebrow at the blushing girl on the other side of the table, whose nose happened to be bleeding. Again. Are you sure you're not sick? He asked her with concern. Asuna resolutely shook her head and dashed out the house with a quick apology and a bright red face. Behind him Naruto glared at his mug of coffee with an almost exasperated curiosity. What in the world am I doing wrong? Why does everything I cook seem to make her nose bleed? Oh no. Whatever the reason, she didn't even take her usual morning bath. Anyway, are you going out the usual spot again? Kirito asked. I guess. Just for a while though, I just need one more point to jet pursuit skill. I want to go somewhere else after that. Naruto replied vaguely as he drained the last bit of his coffee. Kirito nodded without further questions. Unlike Asuna who preferred to level with a party or through quests because of her rapier's lack of any ranged or AoE skills, he liked to solo in areas with high spawn rates, mowing through truckloads of monsters with his sword skills. This method was usually the best way of obtaining experience, comparable only to how Naruto usually gained his experience. The older blonde preferred places where spawn rates were slower but yielded better experience points, fighting monsters on a 1 vs 1 basis as a fleet-footed spearman. However, despite the high experience point yield as solo players, this method of training was extremely risky since they had no support or backup. Even a single mistake could be lethal. For example, Naruto usually chose to train on Blackbone Mountain on the 9th floor where the big but slow armored bears spawned, taking them down one by one with his spears while avoiding their poison-tipped claw slashes. Even getting a simple scratch would throw the blonde into a paralyzed state, leaving him completely open for the bears to maul easily. Kirito himself trained in the berry forest located in the south quadrant of the 9th floor, where greater nepenthes, human-sized Venus flytraps that spawned like flies, much less exp than bears, but died easily after a hit or two. The only problem being that they had advanced algorithms and employed tactics where they either continuously tried to surround him with numbers or hit him with flailing vines that could easily stun-lock him with rapid attacks. Yawning widely, Kirito waved his mug at the blonde. Good luck. Don't die or rather. Make sure you cook dinner before you do. Naruto smiled as he placed the mug into the sink and threw his white cloak onto his shoulder. Cold bastard. I'll see ya later. To himself he mumbled, I'm going to use less salt tonight, maybe she won't bleed so much then high blood pressure I guess. Oh by the way, Kirito. Try to come back early tonight. I'm cooking something big. I'll send a message to Asuna later as well. Hi. Good luck. When the door had closed behind the blonde, Kirito glanced at the wall where a calendar hung. That's right, we just cleared the 8th floor, didn't we? If you have time to do something like that, why don't you use it to level faster, he muttered lowly. The hunter. A tall muscular man with an open-fronted white cloak appeared out of a shower of white lights encircling his lean torso and a white hood pulled down over his hair, though some golden bristles poked out from under the covering. A great bow made of some undetermined wood strapped to his back along with quiver of spears. When his sapphire blue eyes opened once more, he looked around the pavilion warily. Despite the front lines already being at the 9th floor where discrimination towards beta testers was more or less non-existent amongst the clearers, the resentment was still somewhat prevalent amongst the middle and lower leveled players that gathered in the lower levels, especially the City of Beginnings. Without another word, the man began running towards the center of the circular cob at a light jog, with his white cloak flowing out behind him. The stone buildings, built with a medieval style that resembled those that might have been found in Old England, seemed to blur by as he ran through the yellow stone streets. Within minutes, the cob wasn't really that big, the main gates of the black iron castle slowly loomed out of the gloomy air at the end of the street he was currently on. Passing though the open gates and slowing down to a fast walk, he arrived at base of a gigantic monolith made of black stone that served as a gravestone for all the people that had failed to escape Aincrad and never would. A small smile appeared on his lips as he pulled out a bunch of flowers from his inventory, which he laid at the base of the massive black stone grave, decorated with row upon row of names, some of which were crossed out with a single, simple line, as if mocking how easily one's life could be snuffed out, especially for the most trivial reasons. The ones crossed out with a line were the ones that he was here for. Silently, he got to his knees and slapped his palms together in prayer, with his eyes closed under the hood. Yo, I'm back again. I just thought you might want to know that we're already at the 9th floor. It won't take much longer before everyone gets out, there's just another 91 to go. You guys just rest here and wait patiently. I'll definitely clear the game so that all of you didn't die in vain. Clapping his hands another time, the blonde slowly got up and brushed down the creases on his trousers and cloak. He was about to leave and go back get dinner ready when the sound of an argument reached his ears. But you have to help me. My sister's been missing for 2 days already. she's a part of your guild, right? Why won't you look for her? It was the voice of a young girl, desperately pleading, coming from further in the complex, obviously at the entrance to the Black Iron Castle, which was being used by the army as their home base. Without being too conspicuous, the white-cloaked man slowly stepped behind the monolith into its shadows to listen into the argument. I'm really sorry, but we can't spare anyone else to go onto the front lines. A gruff voice that sounded genuinely sympathetic replied. Activating his tracking skill with a mental command, two blue flames gleamed in the dark and his vision zoomed further into the complex to see a vaguely familiar tall man, bowing to a pink-haired girl dressed in a leather tunic, white undershirt and a light pink miniskirt, no doubt the one whose sister was in trouble. Beside him a familiar-looking ratty man with stringy red hair, the row of medals on his chest signifying a higher rank than the tall man in a plain green uniform beside him, laughed in a disgusting manner as he leered at the girl with a heart-shaped face and crying blue eyes, she's dead already kid, serves her right for being so arrogant and hissy too. Now leave. We're too busy to look for someone who couldn't even follow orders. The massive gates of the Black Iron Castle slammed shut in her face, the clanging of the iron gates echoing around the empty compound. Dejectedly, the crying girl fell to her knees and began sobbing into her hands. Carefully making sure that no one was around, the man in white slowly walked out of the shadows, thick boots making rhythmic clicking sounds on the yellow stone, though the girl failed to notice his presence at all. Not very surprising, he figured she was too caught up in her problem to notice very much. Pulling down the hood to make sure that he wasn't recognized, the blonde verbalized his question, "What's your sister's name? And on what floor was she supposed to be on?" The pink-haired girl jumped a little and scrambled away from him, wide, wet blue eyes peering up at him in fear. Who are you? The name's Naruto. I was just passing by when I heard you asking the army for help. Naruto squatted down in front of the girl and pulled back his hood to show her a warm and comforting smile. Your sister is missing, right? Which floor is she on, and what is her name? She slightly nodded, her name's Lightning, typed with English letters. The last I heard from her was that she was on the 8th floor with all the other army members for the 8th floor boss battle. Her voice broke a little, but when the clearing members came back 2 days ago, she wasn't with them. Her name is still on the Monument of Life, so I know she's still alive. The pink-haired girl added desperately. Naruto tapped his chin for a thoughtful moment. Can you describe her? I was there as well, but I don't recall meeting anyone with that in-game name off the top of my head. The young girl, who he surmised to be about Kirito's age, nodded hesitantly, had the expression of someone unsure of whether what she was doing is right, but couldn't think of anything else except the help of a stranger. She has pink hair that is cut a little shorter than mine and blue eyes like me. She was wearing a white leather jacket and a brown leather skirt when she left. Ah, we also have the same band I do on her right bicep. Naruto accepted the friend invite, giving her name a quick glance. He grinned and petted the girl's head reassuringly. Yosh, your sister might be in a dungeon right now, that's why she can't reach you through private messages. I'll do my best to find her. For now, add me to your friends list so that we can contact each other through PMs. Don't worry so much about it, alright? Just go rest at an inn, promise I'll get her back. She bowed down lowly, touching her forehead to the pavement. Please help my sister. I would go myself, but she insisted that I never leave the city of beginnings, so I'm still only level 5, or I would have gone to look for her myself. I can never repay you for helping a stranger like me. Naruto stood up with a grin. The only payment I need is for you to smile. For now, just wait for my message, Sarah, and stay safe until I bring your sister back to you. Wasting no time, he spun around and dashed towards the teleporter, cloak flaring out behind him as he gave the small clock on his interface a quick glance. It was still early, so there was plenty of time for him to make it back by dinner. Hopefully. Sarah's sister was still alive, but judging by the lack of contact from her, it might not stay that way for long. He really couldn't expect her to last too long. Practically leaping through the portal, the blonde was hurled out on the other side at the village of Freiben, the main village on the 8th floor. Had anyone else been watching, all they would have seen was a white shadow almost being catapulted out of the portal before flipping around in midair into an upright position and acrobatically landing with a skid. He crouched and sprung forwards again, simultaneously activating the pursuit skill as he ran, which he ironically only managed to gain earlier today. While tracking had identical capabilities with its successor, Pursuit, it only applied to monsters, beast or bird type monsters, whereas Pursuit was capable of tracking humanoids and NPCs, as well as multiple targets with greater accuracy, as well as giving him passive vision bonuses that enhanced accuracy and range of sight every 100 levels and increased damage against fleeing opponents when mastered. Rapidly scanning the areas around the main compound, broken traces of footsteps belonging to the player avatar Lightning began glowing faintly on his HUD. The blonde sighed in some relief. Luckily for him, the tracks were only a day old or so, any longer, and there would be nothing for him to find, which would have complicated the entire situation needlessly. Following the footsteps, Naruto ducked and weaved his way through the thick tropical landscape. Halfway through the village, the glowing footsteps disappeared entirely due to the low skill level, but it was enough for him to guess the general direction and pick up the broken trail again further into the forest, which wandered off towards of the tower that stood forebodingly right in the middle of the floor. Unlike all the previous floors below it, Friben was different in that the entire floor was covered in forest, with nothing but a scattering of small villages all around the topography, serving as safe points for tired players. Friben itself, the main village was the largest off all the small villages, was barely half the size of the City of Beginnings, and there was no particular importance or attractions that the floor held save the main dungeon. Even the usual secret dungeon had been short and unrewarding. Sounds of animals chirping, roaring and snuffling reached his ears as he dashed past the forest animal-themed monsters heedlessly. It was considered extremely impolite, not to mention flat-out dangerous to anyone in the vicinity, but he really didn't think there would be a problem. By now, almost everyone would have left the 8th floor already, following the trend of staying with the front lines until things settled down a little, not to mention almost everybody was taking the day off as celebration for the clearing of the 8th floor. Except a certain few idiots that shall go unnamed. When he reached the short length of steps that led into the dungeon, the glowing footsteps disappeared entirely, signaling the end of his skill. At its current level, pursuit could only be held for 10 minutes with a cooldown of 15 minutes between uses. Heaving a disappointed sigh, Naruto resigned himself to searching the entire 30 mini-levels inside the tower. Finding a needle in a haystack never sounded more appropriate. Hefting the bow on his back into a more comfortable position, the blonde set his jaw and pushed open the huge doors. With a weird sense of urgency. Pulling up the completed map of the tower, the blonde began hurtling towards ever suspicious-looking nook on cranny, floor after floor, dodging and hiding from as many enemies as possible to save time. With a resigned sigh, he reminded himself to take the hiding skill when he next could, it would make everything so much more convenient, especially if he needed to conceal his presence. Old players received 3 beginner skill slots when they logged into SAO for the first time, but it was possible to gain more of those slots by leveling up naturally or doing specific, read. Humiliating and embarrassing, Kayaba was an asshole. Period. Quests that became available every 20 floors. There were apparently 2 more hidden slots, hidden in the programming as part of the reward of 2 secret quests that could be found, but as of last week, no one had even an inkling about where to start looking for the secret quests or its prerequisites. Part of the intrigue of playing SAO was of course the incredible variety of skills and customizations available in the game, to mimic real life as close as possible, but a player could only receive a maximum of 20 by the system's limits, so there was great degree of skill micromanagement required in order to get the best results, especially during the early to middle game phases. Each skill could only be leveled up independently by using it, like the pursuit skill, or by certain requirements, such as the battle healing or armor skills, that could only be leveled by taking damage. As they progressed higher and higher, the equipped skills granted passive or active bonuses every 100 levels, such as the two-handed spear pierce skill which was learnt at level 200, the passive movement bonuses granted by level 300 cloth armor skill, or the passive strength and dexterity stat bonuses that the martial arts skill granted at level 100. The way the system and skills worked created an incredible level of customization for avid players, giving them a true sense of achievement as they progressed, both in character level, skill level and the game. Kayaba Akihiko, for all his lunacy of trapping 10,000 people in a death game, was a true genius of ridiculous proportions. So much in-depth forethought about the player-player environment interaction, every single loophole, and then programming every single bit into the game by himself. Naruto could only imagine that it must have taken him a near titanic effort and only 6 years to bring Inkrit from concept to reality. Bad Naruto. Totally not the time to be thinking about insane men. I've got a girl to find. He muttered to himself. Activating pursuit once more, he searched around the main staircase, heaving a relieved sigh when the faintly glowing footsteps showed up once again. Taking the opportunity, he downed a quick drink of water before hurrying through the portal to the 28th floor at the top of the stairs. At the top of the stairs, the sound of rocks being repeatedly crashed reached his ears, as if something huge was repeatedly banging on a wall. Immediately a sense of relief flooded his tense body. If whatever it was that was attacking her was still doing it, then it meant that she was still alive. Without wasting any time, the blonde immediately hurried off in the general direction of the sound. The map that floated in front of his face told him that the short path led off the main road into a dead end. Naruto skidded to a halt and crouched behind the last turning, peeking from behind to cover to check on whatever it was that was making that noise. A massive humanoid bull, a minotaur with a double-ended axe that was as tall as the monument of life, charged into the rough rocky surface that signified the end of the path. Slowly, the massive beast took a step backwards before repeating the maneuver again, to Naruto's confusion. It didn't look like there was anything there, nor did he see anybody on the ground, so what in Akihiko's name was the stupid bull doing? Testing out its stupidly tough skull. The Minotaur lowered his head, nosing at a thin vertical crack in the wall that Naruto hadn't noticed, and emitted a massive deep roar. The sound of someone scrabbling deeper into the crevice, away from the Minotaur, caused him to blink in surprise, before narrowing his eyes at the crack in the wall. Blue eyes gleamed in the dark as his vision zoomed itself, piercing through the light fog in the distance, revealing a heart-shaped face with smudges of dirt on it and tousled pink hair that was untied hanging down one shoulder. Eyes that were equally as blue as his own peered out through the crack with a fierce look, as if willing the bull to turn into well-done steak with a look. Naruto whistled lowly, now that was what he called a glare. He turned back to the bull and fluidly notched a spear on his bow, a recurring mini-boss on the 8th floor, rampaging Minotaur with ridiculously high strength stats enhanced with its equally ridiculous double-sided axe, possessed a very basic AI that was similar to the trembling ox on the 2nd floor, in that whenever it saw a target, it generally didn't stop jazzing until it either died or the player managed to run into a safe zone, bulling its way through sheer rock if necessary. Play K on. No, thank you. Chewing his lip, he let the spear fly, the red comet whistled through the air and bounced off the ridiculously thick back of the Minotaur. The bull barely even noticed the tiny reduction in its HP gauge and continued to slam the edge of its axe into the crevice, as if trying to wedge it open. Well, like they always say, if you can't beat him, Naruto muttered before sprinting out of his cover at a low to the ground as he notched another spear. Vaulting high above the Minotaur, he let loose a rain of spears that pelted its thick skull uselessly while upside down. Streaming his body into a thin arrow, the blonde slipped under a wild axe swing from an enraged Minotaur and landed directly front of the Minotaur. He cocked a black iron spear, far more bigger and powerful than the ones he usually used and rolled between the Minotaur's legs. He looked up, kick him in the gonads. And launched the Pierce-empowered spear skywards, directly up into the Minotaur's danglies. The bull's eyes bugged and it squeaked in pain as it began trying to stomp on the insect darting around its feet. Diving between the huge hooves, the blonde rolled and darted into the small crevice that barely managed to fit him and his bow. He pulled out a bag and waved at the girl who looked like she was about to hit him with a cheery smile. Yo, I'm Naruto, are you lightning? You shot him in the balls. The girl replied in disbelief, shock and confusion, mostly disbelief, you actually shot him in the balls. Well, yes. Complete realism has its upsides and downsides. Soft spots happen to be an upside. He offered a bag to her, Peanut. Are you insane? Wait, no, don't answer that. What were you thinking? How did you even know I was here? If you knew I was here, why did you jump in here with me to corner yourself? You already had his attention, you could have just left while I escaped. Lightning huffed after finally spewing out everything she had been holding in. Yeah, is that all you wanted to ask? When she nodded, the blonde continued, in order of the questions you asked, I can't run that fast, so getting his attention is suicidal, unless I have a nice spot to hide in. Your sister asked for my help, and the blonde replied cheerfully before setting down his bow with a thud and began pulling out spears and sticking them into the earth around them. I can't run away, but getting his attention on me however, lets me do this. Do what? Wait, my sister? The girl asked disbelievingly. Heavy weapon skill, rebellion, common to all heavy weapon classes, only usable when the user is the target of hate, dramatically increases damage and piercing capabilities for a short period of time. He uttered quietly in reply as he sighted down the shaft and waited for the proper moment. The Minotaur began his cycle again, charging into the rocky surface uselessly, taking a step back and repeating his earlier charge. Naruto tensed himself as the Minotaur began the next part of its attack sequence, pounding on the ground and roaring. The moment the gaping jaw dripping with cow saliva appeared outside the cave and began inhaling for the intimating roar, Naruto narrowed his eyes. Original skill. Crescendo. Deep blue comets began rushing out of the thin opening. The first spear buried itself at the back of the jaw before being stopped by the thick skin. Before anything else could happen, another spear slammed itself into the butt of first spear, and another, and another. Lightning watched in disbelief as the blonde's hands nearly blurred, his face a cold stone carving of concentration, notching and releasing blazing spear after blazing spear with near ridiculous accuracy, each hit slamming the entire procession of spears up its throat until the first spear burst through the back of the Minotaur's cranium, with predictable results. The dead Minotaur fell down face first on the ground with a final earth-shaking rumble, dissolving into a shower of lights after a few tense moments. Phew. His shoulders sagged in relief and offered a blue teleport crystal to her. Shall we go back? Sarah's waiting for her Nissan. The pink-haired girl who had fallen to her knees looked up at him in disbelief at the completely random blonde that had suddenly appeared in her life. The lost look was suddenly wiped away from her face and she slapped his hand away, getting up with a forceful growl as she pushed past him. I don't need your help. I can get back by myself. The blonde shrugged as he followed behind her, suit yourself. A few minutes later, an angry lightning spun around at the whistling blonde behind her, why are you following me? He nonchalantly notched a spear and shot a monster that had been creeping up behind her, that's why. You don't have weapons do you? Or any crystals or potions? Or you wouldn't have been stuck in that crack for a day and a half. Naruto observed idly, how did you even get stuck there anyway? That's none of your business. I'll get back on my own. She coldly replied. The blonde simply quirked an eyebrow at her, I promised your little sister that I'm bringing you back and nothing's going to stop me. That includes you. The only reason I haven't knocked you out and carried you back to the cob like a sack of potatoes is because of the sexual harassment protection code. Leave my sister out of this, she shouldn't have asked for your help. I am perfectly capable of dealing with monsters and getting on my own. Lightning retorted sharply, you're just another idiot with a hero complex in this god-forsaken game chasing trying to impress girls. Blue Eyes immediately went stone cold and he lashed out with one hand, slapping the girl who was half a head shorter than him across the cheek. The marker above his head instantly turned orange, shouldn't have asked for help. Nothing to do with her. She was crying in City of Beginnings, begging members of the army for help when they refused. She was so worried and you say she has nothing to do with this? She was crying and begging. What kind of a person are you to let your little sister cry and worry about you? He grabbed the stunned girl's arm roughly, now move it. I plan on getting you back to Sarah before the sun sets. Lightning obediently followed the rough grip no her arm in a subdued silence, I'll come. Stop pulling on me. Rolling his eyes, the blonde let go and focused on keeping the girl behind him safe until they reached the cob. The hunter. Cold sweat shot down the back of Naruto's neck as he stepped through the portal, completely regretting the fact that he had lost his temper. The fact that lightning hadn't stopped glaring a hole at the back of his head only made it worse as his body rematerialized in the center of the City of Beginnings. An incredibly silent lightning appeared behind him moments later. She should be around. I already sent her a message that we were on our way back. Naruto murmured lowly as he made to step back into the portal. Wait. Naruto froze with his back to her, yeah. Ah thanks. She muttered with averted eyes. Yeah. Just don't leave her alone again. You don't want to know how much it will hurt when you lose her. He lifted his hand to reopen the portal when a high-pitched scream echoed around the square. Lightning widened her eyes in horror at the familiar voice before darting off towards the source without any hesitation whatsoever, Sarah. Cursing under his breath, the white archer immediately chased after the pink-haired hare, knowing that she had no weapons on her at all, wait. Running down the small corridor, both archer and swordswoman skidded to a halt in a small alley behind the black iron castle to see Sarah being surrounded by a group of men in green uniforms surrounding her. The leader, a ratty-looking man that Naruto now remembered from the first boss fight, was standing in the middle of the circle, leaning over a trembling Pinket. 3 or 4 more men in green uniforms unique to the army were leering down at her. Luckily, they were still in the safe zone, so none of them could or had directly harmed the young girl, but they were boxing her in, slowly pushing her towards the exit with their bodies. The 2 clearers shared a look and nodded as both of them leapt up, using their agility and dexterity to run along the wall, bypassing the wall of men and landing behind Sarah. Naruto immediately stepped in front of Sarah, shielding her with his own body, while the older Pinkat crouched down to comfort her sister. What is the meaning of this? Did we just find you trying to push someone out of safe zone? Behind the men, at the spot that Naruto and Lightning had just left, fearful spectators began gathering and excited murmuring could be heard from them. This is bad, and Nikki, there's a lot of people here now. A tall blocky man worriedly muttered to the stringy-haired man. He shut the taller man up with a glare before turning back to Naruto with an almost slimy smile, what are you talking about? She was just asking us for directions. We were helping her find her sister when she suddenly started screaming and falsely accusing us of things we didn't do. Helping me? Lightning spoke up as she stepped out from behind the blonde's broad back. The ratty-haired man immediately stumbled backwards as he paled dramatically, yo you. She said with an almost frigid calmness, I'm afraid your plan to kill me failed. Kill you? Naruto echoed disbelievingly. The murmuring got just that bit louder as the spectators, mostly players who were too afraid to leave the cob, watched on excitedly, the entire spectacle unfolding into what had been the most excitement they had in a month. He and his friends were part of my team. Shortly after the boss was defeated, they surrounded me and attacked me, yelling at me for being arrogant and an upstart that should know my place, just because I gained ranks in the army faster than they did. She replied offhandedly with an eerily flat tone, they implied that I should service them if I wanted to live. I managed to escape, but found myself being cornered by the rampaging minotaur in the room you found me in. She lifted her finger to point at the pale man with red hair, he was the leader. Is this true? Naruto demanded angrily from the redhead, unconsciously readying his bow in anger, causing the group of 5 men to stagger backwards from his wrath. What's going on here? Naruto couldn't help but pinch the bridge of his nose when he heard the Kansai dialect, a rather unpleasantly familiar figure pushing his way through the crowd with a group of army members behind him, all of them dressed in full army regalia. "Oh, it's you again, huh? It's me. Your members were caught trying to PK Lightning and her sister." Naruto flatly stated as the situation slowly worsened. "I was unaware that the army has dropped low enough to become an orange guild." Orange players were the term used to address individuals who lacked any regard for life in the game, choosing to indulge in killing players despite knowing the costs. A group of orange players that banded together were generally known as orange guilds. "Huh?" Kibayu sneered slyly, "They were caught trying to PK someone. Is this true? Or is the great Joker lying again?" The 5 members including the rat man snapped to attention at Kibayu's presence. "He's lying, sir. We're all innocent here, we were just trying to help the girl when they appeared and started blaming us for stupid stuff like that. Clearly he is just jealous of the army and is trying to smear our name, you know, since no one likes him and he can't join a guild as a soloer." The rat man finished with a cruel grin at his jab. The pink-haired girl leaned in to whisper into the blonde's ear, "That's Kibayu, he is a high-ranked player in our guild. That rat guy and his friends are all under his jurisdiction." "Alright. Let's try to push his buttons and see if he had any hand in this. Ask to bring this to the other top ranks." Nodding at the bit of information, Naruto calmly whispered back, "I've met Sinker before. And he seemed like a good guy. So I doubt something like this would be glossed over so easily." Hearing a murmur of agreement, he stood aside for Lightning. "We have a witness." Plenty of people even saw them trying to push Sarah out of the safety zone. Nodding shortly, the aloof pink-haired girl stepped forward. "Lieutenant Kibayu, I would submit a formal complaint regarding my team, if you can call them that. I was ambushed by my team members shortly after the Steel Orc, the boss of the 8th floor, was officially defeated, citing my arrogance as the reason for my forced retirement. I managed to fight my way out of their ambush, but used up all my potions and durability of my weapons in the process. Further, I was cornered by the mini-boss on the floor beneath the boss room for a day and a half. If you will not take action, I shall go straight to Commander Sinker or Uriel-san and demand justice and punishment for you and your squad." The watching crowd began to turn their ire on the uniformed members, and the volume of their harsh words drastically got turned up. The rolled cactus head began sweating as the scale of what had happened slowly blew up in his face, obviously not expecting something of this magnitude. The way his eyes darted between the apprehensive rat-like man and Lightning's flat stare told Naruto that he had obviously realized that sticking his neck out for his subordinate clearly wasn't going to be in his best interests, especially not if the matter was too big for him to cover up. Yes, I understand, Sergeant Lightning. Men, arrest them and throw them in the dungeons, though there's no need to bother Sinker with this. He's too busy running the army after all." The blonde internally wondered if they knew how pretentious all the ranks and such sounded. Probably not. Kibayu really seemed like the type to pump himself up with all sorts of important sounding stuff after all. "You're going to believe him?" The men being arrested hollered desperately, "You said you would help us, Kibayu. Damn you. Wait. This is a lie. I challenge you to a duel, Joker. If I win, you let us go." Play Ultima burst the gravity. "What use would that serve? You are clearly guilty." Lightning spat out. Naruto grinned coldly, "I accept. Just in time too, my bow is itching for something to shoot." Lightning glared at him in disbelief as they moved the confrontation towards the central complex for more room. "Stop being so reckless. This isn't about you. You're going to take the risk of letting him get away for fun." Cold blue eyes turned on her. "I can accept a lot of things. But he tried to hurt Sarah, he tried to hurt you. Innocents that are just trying to escape the game, as it is going right now, he is just going to sit in a cell and rot." Those cold sapphires sharpened even further as the pinned the grinning rat standing across the square from him. "I want him to suffer." The arena, if you could call it that, was nothing but a small elevated platform outside of the black iron castle, surrounded by interspersed thick marble pillars. Red and orange artificial light filtered through the large gaps of the pillars as the sun slowly set. "This will be a 50-50 duel. Any complaints?" The redhead sneered. The 50-50 rule meant that they would fight until either one of them hit the half point in their HP gauges, reducing the chances of a mistake like in a first hit duel, and there was no chance of anybody dying due to the safety zone effect kicking in the moment someone's HP gauges dropped below 50%. Naruto slowly walked forward with a flat-out innocent smile and a hand held out. "Nope. May the best man win." Grinning, his opponent grabbed the offered and they shook on it before both of them returned to the opposite sides of the arena. A floating translucent window with a portrait of the blonde and the stringy redhead appeared right in the middle with a countdown and their names displayed on it. Beside a worried Lightning and Sarah, someone lowly spoke, "Argo. We got here too late. The match is already over. Over? Ooh, I thought we could see him properly fighting a duel for once. Ah. What a waste. Sarah turned around to find a raven-haired swordsman, a brown-haired girl with a rapier at her side, and a short girl wearing a brown-headed cowl. Ayano, what do you mean that the match is already over? She pointed at the floating screen, it hasn't even started yet. The raven-haired boy scratched the back of his head and dryly replied while Argo and Asuna began giggling, if you want to duel Naruto there are two things you must absolutely do beforehand. The first. You must absolutely tell him that it has to be a fair fight with nothing but our own skills. Otherwise the idiot will cheat. And trust me, he cheats. Outrageously. The second is never stand still, doing that is like asking him to put a spear between your eyes with a target painted on your face for better measure. The countdown hit 0, and the rat-like man who was already in a crouch, with 2 daggers pulled out, sprung forward without any hesitation. The blonde, who hadn't even pulled out his spear or bow, calmly dodged a first swipe and backflipped before leaping over the man. Running up a pillar, he agilely began leaping from pillar to pillar, the Agi-build knife user following behind with little difficulty due to his specialty. What's wrong, Archer? Why are you running? Scared. Naruto landed while the redhead immediately darted in to backstab him when the blonde backflipped over the dagger swipe without even looking, soaring over the rat man's head and landing in a crouch on the other side of the arena. Only then did he pull out his spear. Nope, I'm just waiting. Waiting? For what? Boom. The man who looked like a rat immediately began screaming as his pants exploded, liquid fire clinging to his entire body. Smiling coldly at the body rolling around on the ground, Naruto notched a spear, for that. He ended the battle with a spear to the testicles. Just because he could. How the foo. Giggling, Asuna patted the taller pink-haired girl on the shoulder, just don't let him touch you if you're going to fight with him. He'll pick your pocket without you realizing, only instead of taking something out like everybody else, he put something in, usually something really nasty. In fact, that's how we usually tell whether he likes that person or not. If he really doesn't like that person, expect to see his pants exploding in the most ludicrous way possible, sooner or later. Ooh, but realization dawned, the handshake. Lightning asked incredulously. Yep. Now come on, you and your sister are invited for the Christmas dinner. Asuna cheerfully replied. Walking back to the group, he waved at them with a slightly startled look, what are you guys doing here? Argo waved back, you were late so we came to pick you up. Oh, the blonde said tearily, you guys do care. You wish, we were just hungry, and seeing as you're the only that can cook anything decent amongst any of us, so we came to see what was the holdup on our dinner, assuming it doesn't blow up on us like that guy, Po, that is. Kirito grinned. Oh, is that his name? I never noticed. Meh. Naruto replied before cheerfully placing his hands on Sarah's shoulder, now come on. You two are invited to the Christmas party. B.A. Us. Sarah muttered doubtfully as she glanced at her aloof sister, I don't think we can come. Why not? Lightning turned aside so that her sister couldn't see her face, I guess relaxing once in a while isn't too wrong. Nissan thanks. Sarah jumped on her sister. Ah. Not in front of all these people. The hunter. Play Shoko Nakagawa happily ever after. Boy, Kirito, pass the potatoes. A thuggish-looking man dressed in red shirt and a headband cheerfully yelled at the blonde across the table. Kirito paused from his heated discussion, or rather, heated lecture to an amused Sarah about game mechanics to hand the gravy-soaked potatoes to the spiky-haired man and his guildmates, the Furinkizen. Further, in the hall, a whole group of people, including a huge chocolate-skinned man, his bald head shining in the candlelight, and a short girl with whiskers, only she wasn't wearing her hood now, Argo, that she and Sarah had met earlier, were talking about new spawn spots and resources. Lightning stood uncomfortably in a corner, sipping some juice from a cup. She barely knew any of these people, though she recognized quite a few of them from the floor boss strategy meetings. Almost everyone here was well known in one way or another, leaders and forerunners in their own departments and chosen skills. Argo, the information dealer and fastest person on foot in Sao. Beijel, leader of the Merchants Guild. Line of the Elements, the only clearers guild to never lose a single man no matter the odds. Kirito, the Black Swordsman. Asuna, the Red Flash. Joker, the White Archer. The blonde interrupted the party as he walked out of the kitchen, carrying a massive steaming boar that he had apparently procured and roasted from the 9th floor. The resulting cheers was almost deafening as everyone rushed to cut the boar apart. Klein, put that stupid katana away. Naruto yelled. Oh. Wouldn't carving the boar up with a katana be totally awesome though? Go ahead. Yosh. Let me show you my new sword skill. Lightning face palmed and deftly ducked a piece of flaming meat as pieces of roasted boar began flying everywhere. Klein. Naruto. Laughing cheerfully, the beautiful brown-haired girl appeared beside her with her own cup of juice in hand, why are you just standing in a corner here? You should join them. Lightning awkwardly shook her head, no thanks, I think I'm going outside. It's getting a little excitable in here. The brown-haired girl looked back at the table where everyone was dogpiling a laughing blonde and Klein and found that she couldn't help but agree, sure, let's go out and get some air. The two females stood side by side, leaning on the railing, the pink-haired one staring into her cup while the brown-haired one breathed in deeply and sighed happily as she looked up at the stars when she heard a mumble from beside her, why how is everyone here so happy? Why not? Asuna replied in confusion. Lightning swirled her cup of juice thoughtfully before elaborating quietly, I stay on the first floor with my sister, Sarah. Every day, it's nothing but gloom and darkness, everything I have and will do is to get out of this death trap with my sister. Relentlessly. Almost everybody else I've ever met so far act the same way, including many of the people in that room, but here, why are they all smiling so brightly? I guess. It's because of Naruto, isn't it? There's a reason they call him the White Archer. What do you mean? Asuna carefully considered her words, I think without him, everybody would indeed be as you say, I'd still be training alone like some mad woman by myself in some deep dark dungeon on Christmas night. Kirito would be alone, distancing himself from everyone and doing much of the same. But he wouldn't accept it. He stands there, bearing the worst of everything with us, works as hard as anybody else, but then he bulls his way into your life like some truck and he doesn't care if you don't want to be happy. He'll just drag you kicking and screaming towards it if he has to. Asuna paused and sipped the juice to wet her throat, he told me something once, there's a chance that everybody here won't make it out alive. We all know it, we accept it, but in some way, he wants to make sure we at least get the best out of life, go out with a bang so to speak, cause we're not just fighting for ourselves here. She leaned on the railing, we're not just fighting for our own freedom. The wishes, the hopes of everyone who has already fallen and those who cannot fight for themselves, whether we want to or not, just by being on the front lines, we carry those hopes and wishes on our backs because that's just how being a human works. It sounds really bad at first, but somehow, it makes me want to work harder to make everyone smile and leave the game together. The brown-haired girl blushed, I'm sorry. I probably wasn't making much sense. No, it does. In a twisted way, self-sacrificial way. Lightning corrected her, I want to get Sarah out too, but it's no point if she suffers the entire time she's waiting for me. Asuna just smiled and patted her on the back silently. Suddenly, the sounds of two sets of feet reached their ears, causing them to tense and stare out into the darkness. The door swung open and a brown-haired girl walked in with a worried expression, Naruto, there's someone that wants to meet you. Huh? Who? I thought everyone was here already. The blonde replied from the couch where he was playing cards with Egil. And loosing horribly, who knew those big-ass fingers of his could move so fast. The tall brown-haired man, dressed in strange red robes that weirdly enough reminded everyone present of a monk's robes, stepped in. Behind him a demure-looking girl with fluffy pink hair, dressed in a blue kimono that came up to her thighs and a black bow behind her followed, standing slightly beside the tall stranger. Good afternoon. The distinguished gentleman greeted those present with a half-bow. The blonde slowly got up with a strange, almost amused smile, I'm Joker. How can I help you and Tamamo-san? My name is Heathcliff. And I want to start a guild with you. The Hunter. Play Matsushita, trust me. 24th December 2022. Oh my, a guild. Naruto replied with a bit of humor. Heathcliff nodded, a guild. My purpose is to create a guild with the most talented people in SAO for the sole purpose of clearing Aincrad. I'm flattered. But I don't see a reason to join a guild. Especially not since I've made my intentions about being a soloer clear, besides I doubt you'll gain any recruits if you have people as infamous as us in the guild. He added sarcastically, referring to his staunch defense of Kirito shortly after the defeat of the first floor's boss and their subsequent isolation from normal players. Heathcliff swiftly surveyed the people watching him and Joker with varying degrees of intensity. The man in red armor hadn't even noticed that his cup of juice had turned over in the excitement and was slowly staining his pants. Off to the side, a small girl in thick robes and a hood watched with gleaming eyes, waiting for delicious gossip like a piranha waited for flesh, while the giant of a dark-skinned man looked on with a curious interest. The brown-haired girl stood in a corner with a contemplating expression, along with two pink-haired ones, both of them watching him, one with childish interest, the other with a fearsome intensity. The only person who seemed not to be paying the conversation any attention was the black-haired swordsman clad in a simple black shirt, staring at the wall and swirling his cup of juice with feigned disinterest. I think you'll find yourself mistaken about being infamous, as for why, I'm sure that you already know that we are already on the 9th floor. Within the next month or so, I am confident that we will reach the 11th floor. Do you understand what I am implying? Heathcliff replied with a steady smile. The pink-haired girl beside him barely gave him and the blonde any attention, choosing instead to happily look around the cabin silently with bright amber eyes. But you are a beta tester as well. Naruto concluded easily, causing everyone to start slightly at how easy the phrase was uttered. Almost everybody has had no problems with fighting normal mobs because their algorithms are known and predictable. After the 10th floor, no one will know anything, so they will have to inch forward, bit by bit for safety's sake, and the exploration rate will slowly down drastically compared to the first 10 floors. Heathcliff slowly clapped with an admiring smile, as expected of the White Archer. You don't miss much with those eyes. Though I would also like to add that once the 11th floor is opened, there will no longer be any reason for beta testers to be discriminated against because everybody will now be on an even keel. The new players will already have 10 floors worth of MMORPG experience, and the beta testers will no longer have the edge in knowledge. Anyone who says otherwise is simply trying to stir up trouble. That being said, since you already know the situation, it would only make sense to join a guild where you have support, do you not think so? That's good and all, but I still don't see a reason you want me to join. There are many others just as, if not more skilled than me. I will always be at the meeting anyway, and I have no problem soloing or going in a group with my friends which I happen to trust. He waved at the gathered group, causing most of them to grin and wave back confidently. Egil, who I know will always have my back, and then some. Kirito is a little sour, but is far more dependable than he looks with his sword. Asuna is as sharp with her tongue as she is with her rapier, but there is no other person I would have by my side when I need some firepower. Argo is a little shifty and small, but when you need something done, there's no one better than her. Boy. Oh yay, I have Klein too. He's the comedy relief. Naruto replied flatly, hiding a smile as Klein shook a fist at him from behind. Oh well, more than some random fellow of the street anyway, much less someone I know is going to leave me to die sooner or later. Klein actually began jumping up and down to show off his enthusiasm before Egil planted a fist atop his skull to stop the man-child from embarrassing them any further. That's true. But relationships are built over time. You can't expect them to trust them if you don't let them. Heathcliff replied reasonably. Furthermore, to be honest, I want to create a place where people who want to learn how to use a bow can easily join us and learn directly from you. Learn how to use a bow? Naruto arched an eyebrow before pointing at a grinning Argo. I thought I already published the methods and exploits. I don't see why there is a reason for me to personally teach people. I myself wasn't exactly good with a bow to start with. The pale man almost grinned. Do you remember what you said when you left the boss clearing group after the first boss? You said, and I quote, "It'll be there for you ungrateful idiots to copy, assuming any of you are skilled enough to use it anyway." Heathcliff paused with a half smile, the keyword here being skilled. Naruto scratched the back of his head and wrinkled his nose, showing that he was thinking hard in a way that most of the females in the room thought was adorable. Skilled? I'm afraid I don't follow. Haha, you didn't know Bakuruto? Know what? A nonplussed Naruto glared at a laughing Argo. She gasped and tried to compose herself. Oh alright, you and Kaibu were stuck up that mountain so you wouldn't have seen it. Right after I published how your bow works, everyone, and I mean everyone from the clearing group and then some, gathered in Urbis and tried to do it. The best anybody got was hitting a target off-center from 5 meters away. They finally gave up when that Kibayeru put a spear through his own head. I don't even want to know how he managed to shoot 180 degrees away from where he was aiming. He was lucky that they were at least smart enough to practice in the safety zone, or we'd be less one person on the clearing front. She snorted, no one has tried since. As soon as the memory of Kibayu's terrified and bulging eyes with a pointy spear lodged in his head returned to her, the small girl collapsed in gales of laughter again, causing the others to begin smiling and giggling as they imagined the same of the admittedly rather unpleasant person. As pleasant as that image is, you can now see why I wanted to ask for your help. You can see why having more people that can use archery would help us clear Sao faster, do you not? Heathcliff continued with a charming smile. As Kirito and Asuna watched their blonde friend, they realized he was clearly getting manipulated into agreeing if the way he shifted his eyes or tapped the table nervously was any indication. Kirito felt a slight sting at the thought that he would go back to being completely alone again, since Asuna was almost guaranteed to join if Naruto did. It was a simple no-brainer question because of her limitations as a rapier user when it came to leveling alone, unless she could somehow work harder than both of them, which was out of the question since he didn't want her to burn herself out. Would Naruto and Asuna leave the house then? It would only make sense since they would now have their own headquarters. Kirito was so busy thinking that he had not noticed that the cup in his hand had actually been crumpled into a small ball that promptly disappeared the moment its durability ran out. Ooh, but you'd have problems finding anybody willing enough to learn under me. As I mentioned before, I'm not exactly popular or well-liked. Again, you'll find that that is not completely true. While is there some dissension about you for being one of the elite, so to speak, the White Archer is well respected as one of the clearer's leaders alongside the Black Swordsman and the Flash. Think back to the last few strategy meetings. After Diable's unfortunate passing on the first floor, no one dared to step up and be the leader that organized them until you or Kirito-san did for fear of falling to the same fate as Diable. The fact that the fight with the second floor's boss went about as well as a train wreck without a proper leader did not inspire any others to do the same. Heathcliff pointed out with an almost smug smile. Third floor strategy meeting. It's been 1 hour and all we've done is sit around looking like idiots. Kirito grumbled under his breath, like this it won't even matter if we found the boss room. All we're doing is standing around like idiots. And it was true. The entire town hall of the third floor that was being used as the strategy room was filled to the brim with uncomfortable looking people milling around. All of them were either staring at the walls or their shuffling feet in an attempt to avoid excessive eye contact, just in case they were chosen as the organizer. Naruto grinned and nudged Kirito, pushing him forwards, causing him to stumble straight into the sights of everyone in the room. Since you're complaining about it, why don't you volunteer? The raven-haired youth immediately scrambled back into the line with a muttered apology. Screw you. I don't want to pull attention to myself. He hissed at the grinning blonde. The grinning blonde held up a closed fist, while a hooded Asuna who was standing behind the blonde slapped a palm to her forehead. Alright, a gamble then. Jan Ken Pawn. Loser has to be the leader. It's either that or we stay here until we all die of old age instead of being killed by monsters. Kirito grinned slightly in amusement. Alright. You're on, I'm confident about my reflexes you know. Jan. Ken. Han. Naruto stared at his rock that had lost to Kirito's paper in chagrin. That's not fair. You cheated, I saw you coming out with the scissors and you changed halfway. That was cheating. Kirito gave him a dry look. I don't want to hear about cheating from someone like you. Besides, my reflexes won't lose to you, yay no. He coughed uncomfortably as he glanced around at the room full of people that were looking at them sourly for being so cheerfully loud despite the gloomy atmosphere. By the way, don't you think you should start organizing things, loser-san? Naruto grumbled some rather unsavory adjectives about Kirito as he stepped forward and climbed up on the stage, specially prepared for the unfortunate leader. Sighing, he gathered his guts and clapped loudly, gaining the attention of everyone in the room. Alright, enough looking like a bunch of drowned rats. A few people broke out in wry chuckles. Let's start by organizing ourselves into groups and finding out who we have available for the boss fight. He gestured to both sides of the large room that barely managed to contain nearly 100 players, tanks on one side, sweepers on the other. Without question, everybody began shuffling to each side of the room, recognizing their own roles, tanks being the ones that specialized in hate-keeping skills that usually came with the heavy weapon classes as they were leveled up. Although their damage output wasn't as spectacular as the sweepers on the other side of the room, their hate skills allowed them to keep the boss's attention on themselves, absorbing whatever punishment that was dealt out to them, allowing the sweepers to slowly whittle away at the boss's health without fear. He himself got down and went to the side of the tanks when he realized everyone was staring at him as if he was doing something particularly stupid. Then again, that wasn't that rare an occurrence. What? He asked blankly. Why are you over there? Someone called out. Huh? I'm using a spear, I'm wearing heavy armor, that means I'm a tank doesn't it? Where else am I supposed to go? The blonde asked in confusion as he tapped the heavy plate mail on his chest. 3 seconds later, Naruto found himself completely stripped and standing alone in the middle of the room, with nothing but an open jaw and a pair of orange briefs to protect his decency. Why? He covered his front with a red face. I call foul. This is discrimination. It's freaking December you know. I can feel a goddamn breeze in places that shouldn't even have one. Asuna, some of the females in the room and a few males, began spurting blood thanks to the anime-esque facial recognition system that exaggerated their expressions. Just shut up and shoot. Was the overwhelming response by nearly everybody in the room. 4th floor strategy meeting. Asuna lost the Jan Ken pawn match and was busy looking over the map when she sighed and called out without even looking behind her, Naruto, stop trying to sneak in with the tanks and get back in your spot. The dejected Naruto, heavily swathed in robes that obscured his every feature, grudgingly trudged back into the middle of the room. This is racism. A guy can't even do what he wants nowadays. What happened to free? Shut up and shoot. Everyone yelled at him. 5th floor strategy meeting. Kirito was the leader this time. Incidentally, he lost because Naruto cheated and like Asuna, he wasted no time calling out, Naruto, get your ass back in the middle. I am in the middle. A rather miffed Naruto replied huffily, alone all cold and alone. Shut up and shoot. You could almost taste the exasperated dryness in everybody's united words. Oh yes, I'll shoot. I'll shoot your balls off. Naruto mumbled, quietly crying in a corner of the room with a gloomy aura surrounding him. Hours later, Naruto blinked in surprise as he blew off 1/10 of a single HP bar, which was nearly equivalent to 3 sweepers worth of damage in one hit, with a spear to the boss's little green apples. Wow. I can't believe that actually worked, oh crap. His eyes widened as he realized it might have worked a little too well. The roar no squeaking frog man that served as the boss for the 6th floor completely ignored the tanks and began chasing him with an unholy fury burning in its eyes. Eek. The blonde screeched like a girl and darted away from a earth-shaking punch. Note to self, shot to balls equals instant hate. He mumbled as he dodged an overhead axe cleave and continued running around the chamber like a scared rabbit. Akihiko, goddamn you. Did you really have to be so anal retentive about the small details? He uselessly cursed the ceiling. A few days after that boss fight, when he started showing a tendency to aim for soft spots, or rather, just that one in particular, Naruto gained another title amongst the clearers. It happened to be his favorite. Joker the Nutcracker. The Hunter. Burrito snorted at the memory while everyone in the room was rolling around in varying degrees of amusement. Like I keep saying, you are the only person I know that can piss off NPCs for some reason. Naruto sighed with rolling eyes at everybody else who seemed to be laughing. Even the stoic Lightning was trying and miserably failing to contain herself to a light chuckle. Fine, I get your point. The blonde conceded. Heathcliff smiled. But the smile dropped as Heathcliff waited expectantly. I'll wait until we reach the 11th floor. If we experience more trouble than I expected, then I will join. And I will only teach the bow to people who I deem worthy. No random idiot of the street. Heathcliff snapped his fingers in triumph. Accepted. Tamamo. The pale brown-haired man waved for the pink-haired girl who had been silent up till now to come closer. Petting her head, he glanced at the blonde who was watching them with an unfathomable expression. Until you decide, can I ask you to let Tamamo stay with you? She knows how to contact me when you have made up your mind. Understood. The two of them shared a silent conversation and understanding of the unstated exchange. After the strange man in the robes left, the pink-haired girl obediently walked straight up to Naruto and peered up into his crystal blue eyes with her own amber ones before nodding slightly and quietly speaking, please take care of me, Joker-san. Naruto scratched his cheek, uncomfortably stepping back from her decidedly too close inspection. It's alright. Feel free to just mix around, I guess. You can have my bed for tonight. I'll just take the hall until we figure something out. The blonde was shoved out of the way by a shiny-eyed Klein, who bowed deeply and began stuttering, I'm KL Klein, 22 years old, single and looking for a girlfriend. Instead of staying with that pervert, how about you come with Emak? His guildmate knocked him out by smashing chair to the head and a long-suffering sigh of familiarity. It really didn't take a genius to realize that the thuggish-faced man probably acted the same way to every pretty girl he came across. Ignore this idiot, a chubby man, the one that had knocked out Klein grinned at the blank-faced girl and hefted his guild leader onto his shoulders. I think it's time for us to leave. See ya Naruto, thanks for the party man. Osu. See you on New Year's Day, eh? The blonde shouted back. Ha. Another meeting like this. If this is how we get to live, I don't mind staying in Anchored forever. All I need to do is fight monsters and get to eat good food and sleep as long as I want. That's way better than a shitty accounting job any day, ahahaha. The chubby man guffawed heartily. Naruto grinned and slapped him on the back with an amused grin, knowing that he was simply joking. All of them had people, things, dreams and hopes waiting for them back in the real world. Even if they left Anchored sometime in the future, the bonds that they had formed here would not falter. As the rest of Furinkazen trooped out the door, they waved at the blonde and thanked him for the party, simultaneously apologizing for the unconscious idiot which was slung over the chubby man's shoulder. Naruto grinned wryly as the last of the Furinkazen members left before clapping loudly. Why don't the rest of you get to know Tamamo-san and finish up the rest of the food? I'll start cleaning up the dishes. Arigato, Ka-san. Fuck you. No thanks, I don't swing that way. Play Final Fantasy Shi Lightning's theme. Rolling his eyes, Naruto entered the small kitchen as the sound of music and chatting started up while a grinning Sarah, Argo and Asuna cornered Tamamo in the room that he had just left. He had to chuckle at the look on her face, resembling one of a scared rabbit, a far cry from the earlier one she had worn, one of pure childish interest. Carefully setting down the load of dishes beside the sink, Naruto put in the maximum capacity allowed and tapped the tap to pull out a menu from which he selected the wash option. As the dishes began vibrating in the sink inside a bubble of clear liquid, the blonde settled himself against the counter as he gazed out the small window above the sink and mused to himself that it was certainly more convenient than doing it by hand like he had always done in real life. Do you need help? A quiet voice asked from behind him, startling the blonde a little. Spinning around, he grinned at the pink-haired sergeant, not really. It's not done by hand so there's not much trouble. I just have to watch for the end of the cycle and reload it like a real dishwasher. Lightning hummed noncommittally and settled herself comfortably on one of the wooden chairs by the counter before blinking slightly. This is really comfortable. The level must be really high, most furniture that me and Sarah managed to buy in Cobb don't even have half the comfort rating that these do. The blonde puffed out his chest in pride. I made them myself, almost every wooden furniture in this house was made by me. You picked the wood crafting skill early on, didn't you? Didn't it put you at a real disadvantage compared to the pure players? Lightning inquired with her usual stiff and formal tone. A little. Naruto admitted with a light nod. If you compare me to someone like Kirito and Asuna, who picked all the combat skills that give them the best stat gains with me, who gains nothing from wood crafting or cooking except for my own purposes, then yes, you are completely right. But I'm pretty satisfied with the way I'm going so far. Though you could say that they worked out pretty well for me. He finished with a small half smile. Lightning observed the tall and tanned blonde, and if you went by his lean but relaxed face and pose, he was probably barely in his early 20s, but you really wouldn't think so just looking at him. Talk and move like an experienced house husband, cooking, wood crafting, washing the dishes, cleaning the house and skilled at fighting. Lightning noted with no small interrogative curiosity and faint casualness, you seem to have a pretty wide array of random skills, especially since it looks like you gained them from real life and applied them to Sao rather than the reverse. I'm not a delinquent if that's what you're asking. Pure blonde, was born that way. Naruto replied with a grin, never got into a fight in my life before Sao either. He turned around and began loading the next set of dishes into the sink with a light hum. When he was done he leaned back on his spot on the counter and stared out the window again. My parents passed away when I was about 3 years old. I was adopted by a friend of theirs. Tsunade Bachan, she taught Kano Hiryu Kaijutsu, and that's pretty much where I learned the basics of archery from. He chuckled sheepishly while Lightning continued observing him through narrowed eyes, though I wasn't very good at it. Too impatient. He waved vaguely, she had her own grandchildren, and they sort of became my siblings. My older brother usually had his head somewhere up in the clouds, and Tsunade Bachan he struggled to find an appropriate word before wryly grinning. Well, she wasn't exactly the best guardian around. Drank sake like a fish drank water. So I was basically the only one that kept the house looking like a house, and my little sister wasn't exactly the healthiest person around. He unloaded the dishes and began putting in the last set of dishes. With her drinking too much to properly teach, I took a part-time job with a local wood crafter that supplied the bows for our dojo. So I guess you could say I learned a lot of stuff just living life. Nothing special really. He finished with a nonchalant smile at Lightning who was coldly scrutinizing him. After a moment, she spoke, aren't you afraid of me using that information for my own purposes? It's only natural in a place like this, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure my sister and I survive. The blonde shrugged in an almost carefree manner as he smiled at her with a weird expression, half challenging, half proud of her. It was a very weird feeling, especially since she could tell he was completely and utterly sincere. If it was to save your sister, then I have no complaint, but I know you won't use it for your own purposes. Why would you say so? She asked with a tilt of the head. He stared at her with clear eyes, because we're friends, aren't we? There was almost an oppressive pressure between them as they stared at each other silently, before Lightning began to chuckle lightly and leapt off the wooden stool. I don't know if you are the most cunning bastard around or really just that stupid. Naruto gave her a foxy grin, that's up to you to decide, isn't it? True. She nodded dryly and patted down her skirt before turning to leave the kitchenette. I'll go with stupid for now, Nutcracker-san. This time it was the blonde's turn to laugh as he turned his gaze back to the night sky. On the way out, Lightning lightly tapped on Asuna's shoulder, who was watching the kitchenette's entrance with something approaching amusement, and casually leaned on the wall beside her. He's almost worse than Heathcliff. I'm beginning to believe that he allowed that guy to persuade him rather than the reverse. Lightning observed flatly. You're probably right, though he usually has his reasons. Asuna replied with a cheerful smile. You don't doubt him? At all? In response, the brunette simply watched her with mirthfully glinting eyes. Lightning held her gaze for a moment before almost shamefully acquiescing, you were right about him. He makes you feel it's almost as if you want to try your hardest not because you are afraid of him or even because you don't want to disappoint him. Whether you were willing or not, you just don't want to fail him. Period. It's a very disturbing feeling, especially since we've essentially only known each other for barely 5 hours, but at same time a little relieving. Welcome to the club. Was all Asuna said, complete with a little smirk. The hunter. Odam Yaukai Zakuro asked Benababa no Odam Yuta. Naruto rolled out a futon for Tamamo in his room. The bed was being taken by Lightning and Sarah, both of which whom were currently bathing, because it was too late to send them back to the cob, so he was preparing an extra place for Tamamo to sleep for the night. Here you go. He patted the futon with some sense of achievement. I had one of Eagle's contacts make this for me. You don't really see futons in Aincrad, but sometimes when I need to feel better, sleeping in one always soothes me. I think you might feel the same too. Like most other items and equipment in Aincrad, the futon's durability was limited and went down every time he slept in it, so he tried to use the futon sparingly since it was pretty hard to gather all the necessary ingredients for the item. The pink-haired girl stared at the futon as if trying to comprehend the item before lifting one finger to point at herself with a cute tilt of the head. "Yep, it's for you." He grinned happily. The girl slowly crawled into the futon and began fluffing the thick comforters, a smile spread on her face as she slowly bounced on the down-filled mattress. Ruffling her hair slightly, he slipped his free hand into his pocket and pulled out 2 blue ribbons before handing them to the curious girl. "Here's something you left in my care a long time ago. I should give them back to you, isn't it?" "What is it?" She lifted the ribbons to her nose and sniffed them, causing the blonde to chuckle before lifting them out of her hands and tying her hair into 2 distinct ponytails with the ribbons. The peaks of her new ponytails stood up like pseudo-kitsune ears that wriggled around when the girl mutely squirmed around to look at them. Chuckling, the blonde pulled down his interface with his right hand and materialized a mirror that he had gotten when Kayaba Akihiko had made his appearance in front of 10,000 players and trapped them in this death game, which he passed to wide-eyed girl. As the pink-haired girl, now with 2 ponytails dripping down until they nearly reached her shoulders, excitedly stared into the mirror, Naruto spoke, "You can keep that. I don't really need it anymore." "Thank you. I've never gotten a gift before." She spoke haltingly as she clutched the mirror to her chest. Naruto winked, "Then I'll be sure to give you more, isn't it? Oh, you might like this as well." He pulled out a small bag that he had been carrying around ever since he had started playing SAO and placed them in the excited girl's open palm. "Open it. I think you might like them," he urged gently. Her newly found ears twitched as she sniffed the pouch, her amber pupils dilated, and she hurriedly tipped the bag over, spill a few sheets of deep-fried tofu into her hand, which she devoured immediately, savoring the soft sweetness of each sheet while the blonde watched in amusement. Dropping the bag, which disappeared into little sparks, she immediately shot to the blonde, coming almost face to face with him, and silently begged him for more with soulful amber eyes, newly found ears twitching furiously, causing him to start laughing heartily. "That's enough. No more for you, it's already late and too much of those aren't good for you." She began whining and the blonde damn near folded. Fortunately his will was strong and he gave her a stern look, "If you don't go to sleep, you won't get any more tomorrow." Chastised, the pink-haired girl instantly scrambled into her futon and hid under the covers. Standing up, Naruto tapped the wall to bring up the menu and turned off the light before giving the girl, who was feigning sleep, one last smile. "Good night, Tamamo. It was good to finally see you again." One amber eye opened to look at him in questioning curiosity, but the blonde had already closed the door with finality. Confused, Tamamo retreated back into her futon and wondered why the blonde seemed to know her, especially since the only person she had ever made contact with in the game was Heathcliff. As she furiously thought about, her half-lidded eyes unconsciously began to droop until she fell asleep, dreaming peacefully of being buried in a mountain of delicious deep-fried tofu. The hunter. The slight thudding sound, repeated every few seconds, was what jolted Asuna awake in the middle of the night. Rubbing at her eyes blearily, she threw on a fluffy pink robe and began to feel her way towards the hall in the darkness, wondering if someone was at the door. If there was, she was seriously considering murder. It would be completely justified, Asuna thought to herself as she yawned cutely. It was only when she accidentally stubbed her toe on the dining table that the brown-haired girl recalled that she had just recently learned how to see in the dark. Activating night vision with a muttered curse, the girl made her way through the small cabin with green eyes glowing in the dark that cast everything within her vision with a bright neon green tint when the thudding stopped, freezing the girl in her steps as her heart hammered out a rhythm in her chest. She disliked ghosts. Okay, she really hated ghosts. Peeking out the window from behind the curtains, she looked around the porch for any signs of life but failed to find any. She seriously considered grabbing Kirito or Naruto and kicked them out of the house to investigate when the thuddings began again with the same consistent rhythm, nearly startling the girl out of her nightie. Hi, she was about to call out for her housemates when she saw a flash of white and yellow amongst the trees at the very beginning of the thin trees circling their cabin. Normally, just that alone would have probably sent the girl straight into dreamland, but she had seen that cloak flap one too many times to not recognize it as the White Archer's trademark Windwalker's cloak. Unlike Kirito, who had already switched his cloak around a few times, despite always maintaining the same jet black theme, the blonde had refused to part with his for some weird reason. It was probably a guy thing, she muttered to herself, drawing the robe tighter around her to shield her from the cold as she stepped out onto the porch and began slinking her unseen way towards where she could see the blonde doing something in the forest. So focused was he that he didn't even realize that he was being stalked until the brunette was practically looking over his shoulder. "Jaya. Hiya. The heck was that for?" a panting Naruto demanded from his housemate. What are you talking about? It was your stupid thudding that woke me up," the equally irate Asuna shouted back. Pinching the bridge of his nose, the blonde gestured with one elbow. Using her night vision, Asuna squinted in the direction that he had gestured, not realizing what she was looking at due to her sleepiness until moments later. A small round target, about the size of a human's head, was pinned to a tree, about 40 meters away from where the two of them were sitting on the ground. Littering the ground all around it, embedded into both wood and ground, was nearly a whole arsenal of spears. Nearby the blonde, neatly folded under a tree was one last black wood bow. She knew that he usually kept one on him at all times and at least another 20 in the house, and she struggled to remember if there was any left on her way out but failed to recall anything in the darkness and sleepiness. She arched an eyebrow at the blonde. "You're training." She glanced at the menu, at 5 a.m. in the morning. "What in the world is wrong with you?" She harshly scolded him. The sheepish blonde shrugged before wiping away the simulated sweat with his right hand when Asuna gasped. His entire red hand was bloody and covered in red scars. That was usually how Aincrad systems recognized injuries. She could even see the wireframe inside the skin that constituted their bodies within Aincrad, as if all the skin on the palms of his hand had been completely torn away. "How long have you been training?" she demanded from him angrily, almost incredulously. "Fort Minor, remember the name." Ever since everyone went to bed." The blonde answered truthfully, completely cowed by the usually placid Asuna's anger. "Don't worry about healing that, it doesn't really affect my aim, and I don't really feel the pain." His words, of course, just pissed her off even more. All he saw was the flash of silver in the moonlight, and before he knew it, he had the pointy end of a rapier, barely 3 centimeters away from giving him a third nostril, and a very upset and temperamental girl on the other end. "You are going to sit there and stay there until I come back with some potions." Naruto was about to argue that, despite the core stat penalties he was currently suffering alongside some really minor pain stings, it wasn't urgent since there were no monsters nearby and that they shouldn't waste potions, but when he saw her brown eyes nearly turn red, he rather quickly reassessed his earlier thoughts and nodded frantically like a good boy, dropping his bow with a loud clunk and held his hands towards the sky. He sat there in that exact pose, sweating bullets until Asuna came back carrying 2 small red bottles, which were forced down his throat in rapid order. Once the redness had faded away, at rapier point if he might add, the brunette seated herself under a nearby tree and glared at him. "So? Care to tell me what matter of lunacy you were trying to achieve at 5 a.m. in the morning while everyone and their grandmothers are still asleep?" Warily keeping an eye on the rapier which was still being firmly gripped, Naruto slowly picked up his bow and notched a spear, shooting it down the improvised range as he talked. "It's nothing special. Just good old training," he snorted before firing another spear and began to pick up speed. "My grandmother would be proud. I never practiced this hard no matter how much she hounded me." "What are you talking about? You have pretty good aim already, don't you?" Asuna glared at him. Chuckling slightly, Naruto sighted down the shaft and shot another one. "I'm sure you've noticed. In all my fights so far, my aim is only good either when my target isn't moving, and even then I can only hit anything accurately as long as they are within 20 meters. If my target is moving, I need to be at least 10 meters from him, or I fire at nearly point-blank range if I want any semblance of accuracy at all. That's the reason I work well with Kirito, he lines up my targets for me nearly perfectly with his sword skills." "What about bosses? You seem to hit those well enough." The brunette pointed out as she watched the blonde shoot spear after spear, each one missing the target miserably, though she noticed his aim starting to get closer and closer to the target. "It's kinda hard to miss when your target's ass is big enough to fit into Asakusa's Thunder Gate and still have enough target to spare." Naruto replied dryly, "To be perfectly frank, I'm not that skilled, I simply cover it up with more panache." The blonde grinned cheerfully, causing the brunette to roll her eyes before conceding the point with a reluctant nod. "I can understand that, and considering how hard Kirito and I do as well, I don't think I have the right to say anything about you training until 5 a.m. in the morning, but you've never done so until so late at night. Why start now?" That was when she realized that his hands were trembling slightly. "I'm afraid," he admitted quietly, "Heathcliff asking me to found a guild with him means that I will be taking responsibility for the lives of everyone in the guild, and I can't imagine losing any one of them." Even though his voice wavered. "I know we will." The bow in his hands disintegrated into blue dust, and the blonde trudged over for his last replacement. "Sometimes I really admire Klein." There was a lull in the conversation as the blonde took the chance to gather whatever spears were left and stab them into the ground around him before continuing. "Amongst all of us, he acts the goofiest. He may not be the top player or the strongest in terms of skills or stats, but he's definitely the strongest in heart, the most honorable and the steadiest one. I'm not sure if I can take the burden that he carries so easily." Notching more spears, he began firing rapidly again. "You've never had a problem taking charge of the strategy meeting though?" Asuna quietly replied. She herself had never really thought of this, she had never even thought about the lives that had been placed in her hands, and a slight twinge of guilt entered her heart when she remembered how careless she had been at times. "Why are you even speaking like this? No one says you have to do it. You're stupidly taking a burden that you don't have to take." One side glance from the blonde was enough to answer her. It was simply in his nature to be stupidly heroic. It's different being picked out of a group of people once in a while and being in complete charge of a group of people you personally know and are friends with. He replied stoically as he shot another red comet at the target, hitting the tree next to it with enough force to crack its bark. His hand began turning a raw red again, but he ignored it and urged himself to fire faster, to see further despite the pain. If anything, he used the pain to focus his concentration. "You speak as though you know for certain that we will join Heathcliff's guild," Asuna commented idly. "Not for sure, but I predict an 80% chance, give or take." Naruto countered as he fired another shot, "That's why I'm doing this. I also want to teach people how to survive and how to use a bow to clear the game faster. I can't do that if I'm so weak myself." His gathered spears slowly dwindled until he was finally hitting the correct tree, which was starting to look like the surface of the moon, with the amount of craters left in its bark. "If one good shot can make all the difference in the world when the time comes, then I'll keep practicing so that one shot won't be wasted." He narrowed his eyes, urging his body to focus with more intensity, to fire faster. Spears began leaving his bow so fast that it almost seemed like one continuous red stream. "If one practice shot won't do it, I'll practice 10 times. If 10 times won't do it, I'll do it 100 times. If 100 times won't do it." He narrowed his eyes until they were naught but gleaming slits of ice-cold chips. "Then I'll do it 1,000 times." He fired his last spear. It hit the target dead center, and the tree exploded. Asuna finally recalled how many bows were left in the house. None. What if Naruto fall in love with Asuna's sword art online? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.